Chapter 115. It was an official ship. It would only be dispatched when the officials were traveling or when the escorting officials were supervising the good. Obviously, there must be someone of high status from the government coming this time. Hey, Guardian Yang? What's the matter that made the Guardian Yang come to the celebration pier in person? While he was puzzling, Ziyue suddenly heard his master greeting someone. Ziyue turned his head and immediately saw a middle-aged man in a guardian uniform with a solemn face. He walked over with a group of local officials, squires, and a few wealthy businessmen. It's Lu Menju. Since my superior is here, I naturally have to come to welcome him. Yang Zhengling looked at Lu Dong in surprise. He did not stop walking and waved his hand to the people behind him. Naturally, there were soldiers who immediately set out to separate the surrounding people. Of course, Ziyue and the Scorching Sun Gang were not among them. Superior? Is that the newly appointed Li Jubo? Lu Dong's face turned solemn. He turned to look at the river and saw the ship slowly approaching. He hurriedly said, "It's better to arrive at the right time than to arrive early. Since that's the case, it's not good for me to leave. I'll just wait with Sir Yang." "That's right. It's Li Hun. Li Jubo is here. Brother Lu, please come with me to welcome him." As he spoke, Yang Zhengling beckoned Lu Dong to go with him to the shore and then waited patiently. The other officials and squires automatically stood behind them, looking forward to what would happen. Ziyue naturally followed his master and stood aside. As the official ship in the distance gradually approached, the figure on the bow gradually became clear. It was a young man who seemed to be in his 20s. He had a fair face, sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes. Coupled with the unique scholarly aura, he gave people a good impression at first sight. He was wearing an official's uniform. His eyes were calm, but there was an indescribable aura that made people dare not underestimate him. Behind them, there were guards in tight clothes. These guards held long spears in their hands. Even though they were walking on the shaking official ship, their steps were steady and unaffected. Their expressions were vigilant and their gazes were like lightning. It was as if even the slightest movement of grass in the wind could not escape their observation. Any threat would be quickly dealt with by them. An ever-victorious army. It seems that Lord Li is really valued by that noble. He even has an army to protect him. Lu Yang, who was beside by Ziyue, said softly, "Lord Li is here to exterminate the bandit. He's only an officer, so he won't be able to unleash much of his power. I don't know if they brought the military's weapon of mass destruction. If they did, then the surrounding Ghost Head stronghold might really be destroyed," said Qin Yu repeatedly. "I've never met Lord Li before, so I don't know much about his character. I'm just afraid that he'll target our Scorching Sun Gang," said Lu Dong with a solemn expression. Needless to say, the local government of Qinghe Town was no match for the Ghost Head stronghold. Otherwise, they would not have allowed the Ghost Head stronghold to be arrogant for so long. Even with the addition of the officers brought by Lord Li this time, it would not be enough. Therefore, as the largest gang in the town, the Scorching Sun Gang had the responsibility of assisting the local government to manage the people. It was almost certain that they would be targeted. There was no way to avoid this kind of thing. Therefore, Lu Dong had the chance to leave immediately, but he still spoke up and stayed. Hearing this, the others were shocked and felt a bit of pressure. The Ghost Head stronghold had been standing in the surrounding area for more than 10 years. It was easy to imagine how powerful they were. If it was not necessary, the Scorching Sun Gang really did not want to get involved in this muddy water. However, sometimes one had no choice in the world of martial arts. Soon, the official ship docked. Dozens of officers got off the ship first and lined up in 2 rows, blocking the entrance of the passage. Then, the young man at the front of the ship got off the ship under the protection of several people. Among them, other than the maidservant who obviously did not practice martial arts, the other 3 people left a deep impression. One of them was a young general wearing silver-white armor and holding a long spear. Although he was young, his eyes were sharp and his aura was heavy. It was obvious that he had extraordinary martial arts skills. The other one wore a long green robe but looked like a butler. He looked very inconspicuous. However, as soon as he appeared, Ziyue heard Lu Yang say in a low voice, "Li Yu the Stained Hand." After Bai Ziyue obtained the status of an outstanding disciple, not only did the ordinary sect members pay more attention to him, but even the various supervisors also paid more attention to him. Therefore, when Tan Chaofan saw the puzzled expression on his face, he explained, "Their existences who were on par with your master back then. They're Lu Dong of Heaven Entanglement and Li Yu of Clothes Staining. I didn't expect that even he would come this time. Moreover, from the looks of it, he has been subdued by Lord Li and has become his butler?" "Thank you for explaining, Supervisor Tan." Ziyue thanked him and could not help but look at his master. He did not see any expression on his master's face. However, in his heart, he began to pay more attention to this stained hand Li Yu. It was obvious that this was a third-rate expert on the same level as his master. Apart from these people, there was also an arrogant-looking old man wearing a black robe. They did not know this person's identity, but from his demeanor and aura, it seemed that he looked down on the armored young general and Li Yu the Stained Hand. Evidently, if this person did not have true ability, then he was someone who thought highly of himself. Since he was able to come with Li Hun, he naturally could not be someone who thought highly of himself. It could be foreseen that this black-robed old man must have extraordinary means to be so arrogant. Subordinate Yang Zhengling welcomes Lord Li. From afar, Yang Zhengling shouted loudly, "Welcome, Lord Li." The other officials and squires all spoke. "Rise." Li Hun waved his hand. "Lord Li, this is President Zhang Tu of the Jingxi Chamber of Commerce, this is clan leader Su of the Su family fort, and this is Lu Menju of the Scorching Sun Gang." Yang Zhengling hurriedly introduced the group of people beside him. "I know all of this. Don't forget, I am also a local of Qinghe Town. I believe that all of you have expected my arrival this time. Here, I will not keep you in suspense. I am here to avenge my father and destroy the Ghost Head stronghold. Next, I will need to rely on many elders to help Li Hun fulfill my wish." After Li Hun saw them one by one, he opened his mouth and said, "The Ghost Head stronghold has been entrenched in Qinghe Town for more than 10 years and has already become a malignant tumor. It should have been eliminated long ago. This time, Lord Li can take the lead, we will naturally support it." President Zhang Tu said repeatedly. The others also hurriedly echoed, looking as if they were going to generously help. Li Hun laughed. He naturally knew that these people were people who would not act without seeing the hair. None of their words were true. It was almost impossible to expect them to take the initiative to help. However, he was not in a hurry. Since he dared to come this time, he had already made all the preparations. He was not afraid that they would not comply. Lu Menju, the Scorching Sun Gang, is the largest gang in this town. I believe that you will not allow the Ghost Head stronghold to wreak havoc in the surrounding area, right? Finally, Li Hun's face turned serious as he looked at Lu Dong and said, "Naturally, I am unwilling. Lord Li, if it is within my power, the Scorching Sun Gang will definitely help." Lu Dong said without changing his expression, "As long as Lu Menju agrees to help, it will be fine." As Li Hun spoke, he seemed to have thought of something and said, "By the way, before I came here, I specially visited Gang Leader Jiang. Gang Leader Jiang asked me to give a letter to Lu Menju. I originally planned to pay a special visit, but now it seems that there is no need." As he spoke, Li Hun directly handed a letter to Lu Dong. Lu Dong's face changed in an instant. After returning home, Ziyue could not help but reveal a trace of caution on his face. This time, Li Hun and Li Jubo's arrival was like pouring a bowl of clear water into the boiling oil pot of Qinghe Town, causing it to boil even more intensely. Next, Ziyue did not need to guess to know that Li Hun would definitely form an alliance and form a powerful bandit suppression team to annihilate the Ghost Head stronghold. Originally, the most difficult to invite was actually the Scorching Sun gang that Ziyue belonged to. However, when Li Hun took out the so-called gang leader's letter, Ziyue knew that the Scorching Sun gang had no choice but to step into the trap this time. However, he did not know how strong it would be. However, the Ghost Head stronghold does not seem like those ordinary mountain bandits who only know how to silently hide and wait for the government to attack. I reckon that they will take action very soon. Ziyue filtered some of the information in his mind and revealed a trace of contemplation on his face. After thinking for a while, Ziyue quickly went out and informed his parents and relatives in town to try their best not to go out during this period of time. Apart from that, Ziyue also specially made a trip to the old scholar's house and exchanged for some soul-calming incense from him. The soul-calming incense could double a martial artist's cultivation speed. Normally, he would not be willing to invest in it, but at this time, he could not care less. Since the Scorching Sun gang could not stay out of this matter, then he had to increase his strength as quickly as possible to ensure that he would not encounter any accidents in the abrupt changes that were to come. And now there was only one thing that could greatly increase his strength in a short period of time. That was to cultivate the diamond glass body to the beginner level of the internal refinement technique. As long as he could reach the beginner level of this technique, he would be able to use the characteristics of his spirit to raise it to the beginner level, the great level, or even the perfection level. The perfection level of this technique naturally meant that his internal refinement technique had reached the peak. The strength of a person at the peak of internal refinement technique was comparable to that of the 5 great managers of the Scorching Sun gang. He believed that with the strength of the 5 great managers and his own immortal techniques, even if he encountered danger, he would be able to protect himself. However, there was another matter that made him feel somewhat doubtful and uneasy. I hope I'm just overthinking things. Ziyue sighed and did not want to think too deeply about it. There were only 2 days left to double the vote. Begging for a wave of monthly votes. Chapter 116. For the next 2 days, Ziyue did not pay attention to any rumors from the outside world. He stayed at home and cultivated the Vajra glass body. In these 2 days, Ziyue benefited greatly from the effect of the soul-calming incense, which doubled his cultivation speed. He could clearly feel that his heart had been strengthened. When it beat, it was turbulent and powerful, causing his strength to grow faster and more ferocious. Even his physique and strength had been improved by a little. However, at this time, he had not been able to cultivate the Vajra glass body to the beginner level. Therefore, in terms of strength, his improvement was not as great as he had imagined. 2 days had passed. Ziyue was not completely ignorant of the outside world. Other than occasionally listening to people chatting when he went out to eat, Qin Xiaoping had also specially paid him a visit the day before to ask him about martial arts and discuss some other matters. Therefore, Ziyue learned that although the outside world was calm and peaceful, as if nothing had happened. In fact, the news in Qinghe town was already very intense. In the past few days, Li Hun and Li Jubo had appeared many times to visit the leaders of the various forces in town. They had either threatened or enticed them. With the help of their official positions, they had already set off a huge call to exterminate the bandit. Soon, the news would spread and reach the ears of the ordinary people. And the opportunity would soon arrive. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly, there was a hurried knock on the door of Ziyue's courtyard. It seems that I still have to make this trip, Ziyue thought to himself. Without hesitation, he opened the door. Indeed, the person who appeared outside the door was Ho Linquan's close friend, Steward Su. Last time, Ho Linquan had asked him to return the favor. Originally, he wanted him to deliberately lose in the competition and hand over the outstanding disciple to Li Yinru. Ziue was naturally unwilling to do such a thing that would destroy his own future. Therefore, he directly rejected the offer. Immediately after, Ho Lin-Kuan made another request. In his heart, Ziue was not the kind of person who would go back on his words and not know how to repay kindness. Moreover, what Steward Su said did not seem too difficult, so he agreed. At this time, it was time for him to fulfill his promise. By Xiaoxia, I'll leave the old master's instructions to you. Steward Su looked at Ziue and said, Lead the way. Ziue said calmly, In addition, after this matter, I owe old Mr. Ho a favor. On this point, I hope you can pass a message to old Master Ho. Of course. As long as the item can be successfully delivered, young Hero Bai will have repaid the favor from back then. Master will naturally not let you do anything else. Housekeeper Su nodded repeatedly and led the way out. Bai Ziue followed behind with a calm expression. Following Steward Su, Ziue soon came to a river. Steward Su whistled softly. Soon, a boat sailed out from under a willow tree not far from the river. On the small boat, there were a few strong boatmen whose faces were tanned from being exposed to the sun. They rowed their oars and directly approached. Su Yi, thank you. One of the leaders first greeted Steward Su, then looked at Ziue and asked hesitantly, Young hero, can you really let us pass the patrol on the river safely? Now, most of the people patrolling on the river are from the Scorching Sun Gang, and this man beside me is the disciple of the leader of the Scorching Sun Gang. With his guarantee, any goods can be easily sent to the other side. Steward Su said confidently. In that case, I'm relieved. Only then did the leader let out a sigh of relief and said with relief, Wait, I want to ask, are you really only transporting cotton? Suddenly, Bai Ziue furrowed his brows and asked. Hearing this, the men's hearts tightened. They looked at each other and then looked at Steward Su. Haha, of course it's cotton, but it's mixed with some illegal salt. By Xiaoxia, I think you must know that if it's really just cotton, the master wouldn't have asked you to help escort it. Although the illegal salt is controlled by the government, the profits are high. It's also because it's urgent this time that the master thought of you. Knowing that you're influential, the disciples patrolling on the river don't dare to check your things. Steward Su explained softly without changing his expression. I hope it's not something prohibited by the government. Otherwise, you and I will both be in trouble. Bai Ziue nodded as if he had accepted Ho Lin-Kuan's explanation. After all, he also knew that the reason Ho Lin-Kuan had invited him was definitely because the item he wanted to escort was an official controlled item. Illegal salt was one of the controlled goods. Perhaps there were some other things mixed in, but as long as it wasn't something prohibited by the government, he didn't care too much. Of course, we wouldn't dare to touch something like that even if we were given the courage. If we catch it, we'll definitely die. Steward Su said hurriedly. Then let's go. With that, Ziue leaped lightly and crossed the distance of 4 or 5 meters and jumped onto the boat. The crew looked at each other, called out to Steward Su, and hurriedly began to row the boat. In the blink of an eye, the small boat was like a sharp sword that quickly pierced through the river. Half an hour later, the boat appeared on the river. From afar, one could see the bustling scene of people coming and going on the Qinghe River pier. From time to time, there would be boats of various sizes crossing the river. By Xiaoxia, on the river in Qinghe town, other than the water bandits, the people from your Scorching Sun Gang's water hall are the most difficult to deal with. Once we encounter them, we can only be taken advantage of and have to pay a sum of money to pass. Although it's still better than encountering the water bandits, we earn our hard-earned money. After being taken advantage of, we can earn even less. Now that Bai Xiaoxia is here, we can finally gain more. On the boat, the leader said with a face full of emotion. What about the government? I remember that the government also has official boats that patrol the river. If we encounter them, my reputation won't be enough. What should be done will still be done. Ziue said with a calm face. This time, He also had to bear a certain amount of risk on this trip. Once he was caught by the government officials, his life would not be easy. As for the other party's complaints, Ziyue did not take it to heart. The other party could make a living by relying on the boat. How could they be as kind as the other party said? Ziyue had worked as a waiter in the Pearl restaurant for a period of time, so he had heard a lot of people talking about it. There were a lot of water bandits on the river, and some merchant ships had gone missing or been robbed. Were they really the doing of those famous water bandits? That might not be the case. It was not uncommon for merchant ships to eat each other and kill each other. It could be said that those who walked on the river all year round were bandit. None of them were innocent. This boatman who called himself Chang Lao Er and his subordinates claimed to be honest, but Ziyue could tell from the different depths of the scars on their bodies. The government? The officials usually only patrol the area in the morning. It's already afternoon now. There's definitely not a single patrol boat that belongs to the government on the river, Chang Lao Er said confidently. Nodding silently, Ziyue did not say anything more. Along the way, they did not see a single official boat on the river. But from time to time, there would be disciples of the Scorching Sun Gang's Water Affairs Division patrolling the river. Because Ziyue and the others were on a small boat, even if the disciples of the Internal Affairs Division found them, they did not pay too much attention. Another half an hour passed, and the group of people finally pushed the boat into a place full of reed. It was enough to hide 3 to 5 small merchant ships without being discovered. Under the control of the boatman, the boat darted around in the reeds, agile and changeable. It took a while for Ziyue to see the light in front of him. Immediately after, he saw a medium-sized merchant ship that could carry dozens of tons of heavy objects docked by the shore. The moment Ziyue and the others appeared, they heard greetings. "Old Chang, you're back. Chang Lao Er, how was it? Did you pass?" "Don't worry, this time I've invited a great master. He'll definitely let us pass the inspection smoothly and deliver the goods." Chang Lao Er quickly responded and called for his men to push the boat to the merchant ship. Someone threw down a rope, and then the few people on the boat climbed up nimbly. Refusing the others' attempts to pull him, Ziyue leaped slightly on the bow of the ship, and then lightly tapped on the merchant ship. He had already jumped onto the big ship. Looking at the merchant ship, including the few from before, there were a total of 30 people on the ship. These people's faces were all tanned after being exposed to the sun. Some of them were dressed in tight clothes, while others were bare-chested. But what was not surprising was that there were some scars on their bodies, old and new, which made them look very strong. At this moment, most of them were sizing up Ziyue without batting an eyelid. Their gazes contained doubt, hope, and even a trace of indifference. Ziyue was also looking at these people. With just a glance, his heart trembled. These people did not look like proper boatmen, but more like pirates. Real pirates. Looking at the ship again, he saw layers of cotton on the outermost layer. But from his angle, he could see that under the cotton, there were boxes packed with large wooden boards. Obviously, what they were transporting this time was actually the contents of these wooden boxes. And most importantly, the contents of these wooden boxes could not be illicit salt, because the weight of illicit salt was not something that these light wooden boards could bear. "Have I boarded a pirate ship?" Ziyue could not help but sigh in his heart. Begging for monthly tickets, begging for subscriptions. Best if you can support all of them, thank you. There are only a few chapters in total, the jump is too serious. Sobbing. Chapter 117. Boss, this is Ziyue and Bai Xiaoxia, the disciple of Lu Menju of the Scorching Sun Gang. I heard that he has now become an outstanding disciple of their gang. With him around, we shouldn't encounter any problems on this trip. Chang Lao quickly arrived in front of a burly man and spoke respectfully. "Ziyue, the Broken Saber Man, I've heard of your name. Now that I've met you, you're indeed outstanding." The burly man laughed and hurriedly walked over. "You're too polite. May I know your name?" The moment he saw this burly man, Ziyue's pupils constricted, but he quickly calmed down and asked calmly. He had seen this person before. To be honest, he had a little conflict with him. Although the 5th stage golden body that he had cultivated before was obtained from 6th Lu, it was actually this person's thing. The leader of the water bandits, the water immortal. He never expected that he would be on the same boat as the other party. And from the looks of it, he was going to help the other party suppress the goods? Since when did the water bandits start doing serious business? Suddenly, Ziyue thought of the secret meeting between the water immortal and the disciple of the 5th channel, Zhang Yuchang, that he had accidentally seen some time ago. Could it be that the thing under the cotton was what Zhang Yuchang's so-called Uncle Master needed? "My surname is Zhou, and I'm ranked 3rd in the family. You can call me 3rd Brother Zhou," the water immortal said with a smile. Ziyue nodded and didn't say anything else. By now, he had completely confirmed that he was in a bandit's lair. However, he was still a little hesitant about whether he should make a move or not. After thinking about it, he decided not to make a move. If possible, he didn't want to cause any trouble. No matter what the water immortal wanted to do, as long as she didn't provoke him, he didn't want to pay attention to her. "By Xiaoxia, if there are no problems, shall we set off?" the water immortal asked. "Let's go." Ziyue nodded. Then, he heard some water bandits calling out to the ship to weigh the anchor and set sail. Not long after, the merchant ship left the shore. Its speed gradually increased, like a fish swimming through the reed. 10 minutes later, the merchant ship appeared on the river. At this time, they could gradually see some ships sailing on the river. There were fishing boats, cargo ships, and small boats used to ferry people across the river. The merchant ship that Bai Ziyue and the others were on did not stand out when it merged into the sea. "There's a ship approaching. It's the patrol ship of the Scorching Sun Gang's waterhaul. By Xiaoxia, it's up to you now." Suddenly, the water immortal spoke. "Of course I know what to do," Ziyue said softly. Soon, the patrol ship approached them. "So Bai Shidi is here. Then there's no need to check this ship. I also watched the battle where Bai Shidi defeated Li Yinru. It was really inspiring." Ziyue was standing at the bow of the ship. After the Scorching Sun Gang's patrol ship came over, the people on it soon saw Ziyue, who was wearing the regular uniform of an inner sect disciple, and one of them hurriedly said. They all knew that Ziyue had already obtained the status of an outstanding disciple in the sect and was destined to have a bright future. Naturally, they were willing to build a relationship with him. Besides, it was just a matter of convenience. It would be great if they could get a favor from him. "Senior Brother Zhu, you're welcome. I'll treat you to a drink next time." Ziyue also had some impression of this person, but he only knew that his surname was Zhu. He couldn't remember his specific name. "Then we'll remember it. Don't pretend that we don't know each other when we meet." Senior Brother Zhu was also happy to hear Ziyue call out his surname and hurriedly said with a laugh. "Of course not," Ziyue said hurriedly. "Okay, let's not waste any more of your time. Let's go." Senior Brother Zhu called out loudly, and the patrol ship they were on immediately rippled away. Very quickly, they moved towards another merchant ship. Bai Xiaoxia is really knowledgeable. If it were just us, we would definitely be blackmailed, the water immortal said respectfully. Ziyue glanced at the other water bandits, and saw that they were all relaxed after being nervous. He knew that if he hadn't come forward just now, these people would definitely have attacked. He had more guesses about what was under the cotton, but he said, "Senior Brother is just giving me face." Next, the merchant ship set sail again. On the way, they encountered a bunch of patrol ships. Ziyue also came forward, and the other party quickly gave them face and let them pass. In this way, more than an hour passed, and the merchant ship gradually approached a sandy area along the coast. "Have we arrived?" Ziyue looked at the water immortal. Immortal Master Zhang, come out, we're here. The water immortal didn't answer but shouted loudly. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw a few vigorous figures dashing out from the bushes behind the sand. At the same time, Zhang Yuchang's fat body also appeared from behind. Is everything ready? Zhang Yuchang called out from afar. Of course, 150 crossbows, 100 battle bows, and 10,000 long arrows. Everything is ready. The water immortal hurriedly said loudly. As he spoke, his subordinates immediately began to move. They threw away the bags of cotton on the ship, revealing the wooden boxes inside. Bang! 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 The wooden boxes were quickly opened, and the crossbows, battle bows, and long arrows were all revealed. These battle bows and crossbows were all well made. From the tail of the arrow to the body of the bow, there were also production marks. They were real military items. Even though Ziyue had long known that these things must be controlled items, when he really saw these battle bows and crossbows, his face changed a little. Military equipment. Compared with illegal salt, smuggling of military equipment was strictly prohibited by the government. Once caught, they would definitely be severely punished and would be sentenced to capital punishment. He really didn't expect that they were transporting such items. In that case, the identities of these people are about to be revealed. Then, Ziyue looked at the strong men who followed Zhang Yuchang. The Ghost Head Village. They could only be from the Ghost Head Village, because only they needed and only they dared to buy and sell military equipment to deal with the upcoming bandit suppression operation of Li Hun. Besides, what frightened Ziyue even more was that he knew that in fact, the Ghost Head Village seemed to have expected this half a month ago or even longer. They asked the Water Immortal to prepare in advance and smuggle this batch of military equipment. And that whole Linkuan, thinking of the role the other party played in this operation, Ziyue couldn't help but narrow his eyes, and a trace of killing intent emerged in his heart in an instant. The other party's move really put him in extreme danger. Good, the Water Immortal is indeed a trustworthy person. With a leap, Zhang Yuchang's fat body directly jumped more than 10 meters and landed on the merchant ship. When he saw the things inside, a satisfied smile appeared on his face and he said, "Everyone, get on the ship and move the things away." "Wait, where's the rest of the silver?" the Water Immortal asked loudly. As soon as he said that, his subordinates all clenched their weapons nervously. Some people even quickly picked up crossbows and inserted long arrows, ready to shoot at any time. "Of course we brought the things." Seeing this, Zhang Yuchang's smile didn't change. Soon, a person carrying a large box quickly jumped onto the ship. Opening the box, under the sunlight, a piece of golden gold was displayed in front of everyone. "This is the remaining 500 taels of gold." Zhang Yuchang looked at the Water Immortal and said with a smile, "Water Immortal, you're a little too careful. Since we've already given you the deposit of 500 taels of gold, how can we be greedy for the remaining 500 taels of gold?" "Haha, Immortal Master Zhang is right. It's just that I'm used to licking my blade. If I weren't careful, I would have sunk into the river and become fish dung. It's always good to be careful." The Water Immortal wasn't embarrassed. She laughed, took the box containing 500 taels of gold, and said, "Give them the things." Then, dozens of people from the Ghost Head Village quickly jumped onto the merchant ship. Each of them carried one or even two wooden boxes and quickly jumped off the ship. They were martial artists and had great strength. Even if the wooden box was filled with arrows, it would at most weigh 100 or 200 pounds. It was nothing. They walked as if they were flying. Soon, the group of people headed towards the mountain forest in the distance. That seemed to be the direction of the Ghost Head Village. "By the way, how should I address this little brother beside me?" Seeing that the transaction was going smoothly, Zhang Yuchang seemed to have just noticed Ziyue and asked, "Haha, Immortal Master Zhang, you still don't know, right? This is Ziyue by Xiaoxia, the disciple of Lu Dong, the leader of the Scorching Sun Gang in Qinghe Town." After receiving the silver, the water immortal seemed to be in a good mood and said with a laugh, "Ziyue, the broken saber man? I'm sorry for the disrespect," Zhang Yuchang said with a slightly moved expression on his face. "Senior brother Zhang, you must be forgetful. We've met once 3 years ago." Ziyue replied calmly. "Really? Now that you mention it, I do have some impression of you. It's just that Bai Xiaoxia's appearance has changed a lot, so it's normal that you can't recognize him." Zhang Yuchang smiled and continued, "Recently, I lost something in Qinghe town. As the disciple of the leader of the Scorching Sun Gang, Bai Shidi must have great appeal, even better than the government. I wonder if you can find it for me? Is there such a thing? I don't know what you lost, senior brother. I don't dare to compare myself to the government, but I'll do my best to help." Ziyue also said hurriedly. The water immortal on the side was a little confused by their brotherly behavior. "It's a corpse. A corpse that has been with me for more than 10 years, spent a lot of effort, invested a lot of money, and even abandoned the progress of my cultivation for this. Junior brother, do you remember it?" Zhang Yuchang still had an affectionate look on his face, but his voice gradually became a little low. Chapter 118. As for the corpse, it's not easy to find. Maybe it's rotten, maybe it was burned, or maybe it ran away on its own. Who knows? Ziyue's expression remained the same, but his voice became calmer. In fact, the moment he saw Zhang Yuchang, Ziyue noticed that there was something wrong with the way the other party looked at him. Although he quickly looked away and began to talk to the water immortal, Ziyue already had an ominous premonition, and his heart was secretly in his throat. After that, when the other party mentioned that he had lost something, Bai Ziyue thought to himself that it was as expected. Just like how he knew that the refined corpse in the graveyard of Qinghe town belonged to Zhang Yuchang, the other party also knew that he was the one who killed the refined corpse. Therefore, Ziyue knew in his heart that it would probably be difficult for him to get away with it this time. It seems that Bai Shidi doesn't intend to admit it. Zhang Yuchang's face turned completely cold, and he didn't intend to pretend to be polite anymore. Is there some sort of misunderstanding? The water immortal on the side also saw that something was wrong and hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Having completed the deal, he naturally didn't want to cause any more trouble. There's no misunderstanding. As Zhang Yuchang spoke, he saw that all the ordnance had been moved away by the people of the Ghost Head village. He shouted in a low voice, "Attack!" In an instant, the people of the Ghost Head village quickly rushed up again and began to attack the people on the water immortal's side. At this moment, the moment Zhang Yuchang spoke, he immediately flew back. At the same time, a small sword shot out like a bolt of lightning and rushed directly to the water immortal. The water immortal was furious. Before she could react, the small sword pierced her head. Dong! With a loud bang, the box full of gold in his hand suddenly fell, and gold ingots scattered on the deck of the ship. The water immortal, who was a little famous nearby, also died. "We are mountain bandits, and you are water bandits. We are all born to rob. When have you ever seen us do business properly?" A man from the Ghost Head stronghold held a saber in one hand. With a sinister laugh, he directly chopped a water bandit who couldn't react in time into two. The others also quickly attacked the water bandit. Under the surprise attack, other than a few people who remained vigilant, most of the water bandits were hit. "Humph!" Ziyue coldly snorted. His saber quickly slashed and sent a Ghost Head stronghold bandit near him flying. Then his figure flashed and instantly crossed the distance of 5 or 6 meters. He stood on the bow of the ship and without any hesitation, he directly flew towards the land. "Do you think you can still escape after killing my refined corpse?" A cold voice sounded. Then, the small sword once again turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed towards Ziyue. Ziyue didn't answer. Unknowingly, a transparent shield appeared on his back. Spell, Divine Light Shield. Ding! the small sword vibrated and clashed against the shield. It only made the divine light shield tremble slightly before returning without any effect. At this time, Ziyue naturally didn't have any scruples and directly displayed his spells. The divine light shield at the perfect level already had extremely strong defensive power. Even the powerful refined corpse from before couldn't break it in one go. Judging from the spiritual power fluctuations of this small sword, it was similar to his golden thread saber. Naturally, it couldn't break it. Then, Ziyue's figure flashed and directly crossed a distance of nearly 10 meters. Cloud step. Whoosh. In midair, Ziyue's eyes were cold. Unknowingly, a ball of orange flame appeared in his hand. Without any hesitation, the flame was shot out by him and directly landed on the wooden boxes that had just been moved off the merchant ship. Spell, spirit fire spell. Boom. The flames exploded and the wooden boxes shattered. The scorching flames constantly destroyed and calcined the battle bows and crossbows in the wooden boxes. Ziyue was never a person who only suffered losses and didn't know how to take revenge. Quick, extinguish the fire. A bandit's face changed greatly. He hurriedly rushed to the wooden boxes and used his long saber to slap them. However, the spirit fire spell relied on spiritual power to burn. Relying only on the long saber in his hand, not only was he unable to extinguish the flames, but the saber was quickly contaminated by the spirit fire. Then, it was burned red and bent. "You're courting death." Zhang Yuchang was furious. A cloth banner suddenly appeared in his hand. The cloth banner swayed with spiritual light. In an instant, the whole world seemed to have darkened a bit. A thick Yin Qi invaded. Immediately, more than 10 Yin spirits quickly rushed out. These Yin spirits all had corporeal bodies and sinister expressions. They were like the world's most terrifying evil spirits that had descended to the human world. Among them, 3 to 5 Yin spirits directly pounced on the battle bows and arrows. Under the attack of the strong Yin Qi, they finally gradually extinguished the spirit fire. However, at least 10 of the 20 boxes had already been burned beyond recognition. More than half of the crossbows and arrows had been destroyed. "Quick, send some people to transport these things back." As Zhang Yuchang spoke, he stretched out his hand again. The small sword once again turned into a stream of light and rushed toward Ziyue. "Yes!" A low shout rang out. Soon, a dozen or so bandits looked at the ghosts with reverence. They quickly picked up the wooden boxes that were still in good condition and quickly fled into the distance. As for the battle on the other side, it was gradually coming to an end. The Ghost Head Village's side was originally a surprise attack. In addition, the head of the water bandits, the Water Immortal, was killed by Zhang Yuchang at the first moment. Naturally, their morale was greatly reduced. Except for a few who relied on their good swimming skills and directly jumped off the boat to escape from the water, all of them had been killed. "Do you really think I'm easy to bully?" Looking at the small sword that shot over again, Ziyue's expression didn't change. His spiritual power quickly surged. In an instant, a small golden saber shot out from his waist. Then, like a bolt of lightning, it directly met the small sword. At the same time, he grabbed his back. Immediately, he grabbed a bamboo tube in his hand. Quickly opening the bamboo tube, Ziyue immediately pulled out a scroll from it. It was the 24 restriction magic artifact, the Eagle Swordsman painting. For this operation, Ziyue was more careful. Naturally, he had to carry all the means to fight the enemy with him. Therefore, even though it was inconvenient to carry this scroll, he specially wrapped it in a bamboo tube and carried it on his back with a silk thread. Unfolding the scroll, Ziyue slightly tapped on it. Whoosh! The violent sound of wind surged. Whoosh! Immediately after, a loud eagle cry resounded through the void. The eagle had a wingspan of more than 10 meters. Its body was huge and majestic. Its eyes were like lightning and its beak was like a hook. Its long and sharp claws could even split mountains and rock. They were as sharp as diamond. With a flap of its wings, The eagle turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed directly to Ain's spirit. Its sharp beak pecked fiercely. Poof! It was like pecking a watermelon. The almost solid Ain's spirit immediately collapsed. Even though it quickly reformed, its aura was unavoidably much weaker than before. However, Zhang Yuchang had released a large number of Ain's spirit. Very quickly, 4 or 5 Ain's spirits directly pounced on the eagle and wantonly attacked it. Under the eerie ghost chi, they were ruthless and fierce. The remaining Ain's spirits rushed toward Ziyue without hesitation. All kinds of ghostly dharma, ghost hitting wall, charm technique, intimidation, ghost claw were constantly used. In response, Ziyue's expression did not change. He stretched out his hand and tapped on the scroll. Whoosh! Immediately after, another eagle turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed directly toward those ghosts. At the same time, silently, a swordsman with a pitch-black body and a sword case on his back appeared beside Ziyue. His face could not be seen clearly. Kill! Ziyue shouted softly. The swordsman quickly drew out the long sword in his hand. Whoosh! With a flash of sword light, Ain's spirit was directly cut in two. After a full 3 to 4 breaths of time, the Ain's soul finally condensed again. However, the reformed Ain's spirit was many times weaker than before. Whoosh! With another swing of the sword, the swordsman cut another Ain's spirit in two. Whoosh! With a flash of sword light, the swordsman had already broken through the obstruction of the Ain's spirits. He did not stop at all and shot out like a bolt of lightning. Quick, stop him! Zhang Yuchang's expression changed instantly. As he retreated, he hurriedly cast a Dharma spell. A black-green light quickly condensed and then shot toward the swordsman. At the same time, he hurriedly controlled the small sword that flew backward after colliding with Ziyue's golden thread saber and quickly shot toward the swordsman. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 rays of sword light flashed quickly. Even the Dharma spell was cut in two and lost its power. As for the small sword, it was also quickly sent flying by the swordsman's sword light. However, taking advantage of this time, Zhang Yuchang quickly retreated and came to the back of several ghost head stronghold. With a gloomy face, he looked at the swordsman who suddenly appeared and Ziyue, who was behind the swordsman with a calm look. Even though he already knew that Ziyue's means were extraordinary, after all, he was able to kill his refined corpse. In his heart, he had some plans. However, he never thought that the other party's means would be so powerful. Especially the strength of the other party's immortal technique. The spiritual flame technique and the divine light shield were far beyond his knowledge of these 2 Dharma spells. Greater mastery or perfection. He did not dare to believe that someone could optimize Dharma spells to such an extent. Most importantly, the scroll Dharma artifact in the other party's hand. At the same time, a trace of passion flashed in his eyes. A summoning Dharma artifact. He did not expect that the other party would have a summoning Dharma artifact. Most importantly, the grade of this Dharma artifact was not low. Even if it was not at the level of a middle-grade Dharma artifact, it was definitely at the top of the low-grade Dharma artifact. The 2 eagles' combat power was not inferior to that of an ordinary internal refinement warrior. In addition, the swordsman's swordsmanship was swift and fierce. Even a peak internal refinement warrior would have a headache when facing him. The combination of the 3 of them was far more threatening than his refined corpse. If he had such a Dharma artifact in hand, why would he have to spend more than 10 years working so hard with a corpse? Chapter 119. Kill! With a shout, the swordsman's sword light flashed again. A bandit from the Ghost Head stronghold was about to raise his saber when he suddenly felt a chill in his chest. His heart had been pierced. Whoosh! The swordsman's figure flashed past and dodged the attack of a bandit. When he appeared again, he was already at the bandit's side. With a slash of his sword, a head flew into the sky. Like chopping vegetables with a knife, the swordsman killed one person with every step he took. No matter if it was a ghost or a bandit, nothing could stop him in the slightest. By shitty, your summoning Dharma artifact is indeed powerful, but its limitations are also very obvious. I'd like to see how much spiritual power they have left after they explode. Zhang Yuchang sneered and stretched out his hand in front of him. In an instant, withered vines suddenly emerged from the ground and rushed out quickly, directly wrapping the swordsman. Spell, Withered Vine Entanglement. He knew that although summoning spells were powerful, there was also a fatal limitation. That was, the amount of spiritual power they consumed was fixed. As long as he could exhaust the spiritual power of the summoning swordsman as soon as possible, they would naturally be no threat. Is that so? Xiu's expression did not change, but his figure had already flashed repeatedly. With a slash of his saber, a ghost that had just condensed was shattered again. Xiu's figure stretched out, and his feet moved continuously as if they were weightless. However, when he stepped on the ground, there was always a force pushing him, and there was always a rumbling sound. Then, his figure shot out like a spring. Cloud step. In the blink of an eye, Xiu had already rushed in front of Zhang Yuchang like the swordsman. Although Xiu had shown all kinds of immortal methods before. Don't forget, he was also a martial artist. Although he was not as fierce as the swordsman, he was as fast as lightning, and he could kill people with one step and one sword. However, his strength was not weak either. He had already reached the pinnacle of external forging and had begun internal forging. His aura was wild, and rich blood qi surged out like smoke signals, stirring up the air and causing it to emit a rolling sound. A bandit rushed over. Compared to the murderous swordsman, he obviously thought that Xiu was easier to deal with. Chopping blade technique. Xiu's eyes were cold, and the blade immediately rolled. Boom! With a slash of the saber, a terrifying force descended. Puff! The bandit's long saber was knocked to the ground. At the same time, Xiu's long saber seemed to have destroyed everything in its path and cut the bandit's body into two halves. In terms of strength, even martial artists at the internal refinement level were rarely his match. With the burst of strength and the perfection of the chopping blade art, his attack power was no weaker than some martial artists at the late stage of internal refinement. It was even superior. How could an ordinary bandit who was only at the outer forging tendons and bones block him? On the other side, the swordsman also unleashed a shocking sword attack. His body was like a whirlpool, cutting off all the withered vines. However, at the same time, the spiritual energy in his body was finally exhausted. He directly turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared from the spot. The swordsman had attacked continuously from the moment he appeared. Sword after sword, he destroyed all the enemies in front of him. This method was naturally very powerful, but the spiritual energy it consumed was also extremely terrifying. The 800 rays of spiritual energy stored in his body were also exhausted under the attack of sword after sword. As expected, without the summoned creature, let's see how you are my match. Seeing this, Zhang Yuchang was overjoyed and hurriedly attacked again. Magic, Spiritual Light Shield. Magic, Spiritual Flame Technique. Naturally, he had mastered these two most basic magic techniques. Even if his attainments were not at the level of perfection like Xiu's, he was still able to cultivate them to the small success level and was able to use them in an instant. You're not the only one who knows magic. A cold light flashed in Xiu's eyes, and an orange-red flame whistled out. Spiritual Flame Technique. It was the same spiritual flame technique, but the magic that Xiu used far surpassed the magic that Zhang Yuchang used, no matter if it was the pressure or the compressed power within it. Boom! In almost an instant, the two spiritual flame techniques collided. However, Zhang Yuchang's spirit flame technique was extinguished in an instant. As for Bai Xiu's spirit flame technique, its power did not decrease in the slightest. It directly collided with the spirit light shield. Poof! The spiritual light shield trembled slightly and instantly shattered. The flames with a whoosh were about to land on Zhang Yuchang's body. Seeing this, Zhang Yuchang's expression changed drastically. He did not care about the consumption of spiritual energy in his body and continuously poured it into the cloth banner in his hand. At that instant, the banner shuddered violently as streams of extremely strong yin qi burst out from it. The flames of the spiritual flame technique were continuously washed away by the yin qi and gradually weakened until they were completely extinguished. Even at this time, the dense yin qi still did not stop flowing out. Under the continuous influx of spiritual energy from Zhang Yuchang, the dense yin qi instantly spread out and enveloped the surrounding 10 meters. In this dense fog of yin qi, Ziyue instantly felt waves of strange fluctuations directly invading his mind. Everything around him could not be seen clearly, only threads of strange yin qi continuously invading his mind. Furthermore, even the direction was difficult to discern. His heart trembled, but Ziyue's expression did not change. His mental energy surged and quickly condensed runes in his mind. In the instant that the spiritual energy in his body was drawn and poured into the runes, Ziyue's eyes immediately flashed with a ray of light. The scene that was originally obscured by the dense fog of yin qi became incomparably clear in an instant. Furthermore, almost immediately, Ziyue discovered Zhang Yuchang's figure. At this time, he was rapidly recalling the magic tool Small Sword and was about to activate it again. It was the spiritual eye technique. Even if Ziyue had not been able to cultivate the spiritual eye technique, the use of this technique at this time had already played a crucial role. Die! Seeing Zhang Yuchang's figure, how could Ziyue hesitate? His figure paused, and the ground suddenly exploded. Sand and gravel splattered everywhere. Ziyue's body was like a sharp sword, directly dashing out. With a wave of the blade light, it seemed to be able to cut through the endless fog. You can see clearly? Zhang Yuchang was horrified and wanted to quickly retreat. However, it was too late. The blade light whistled and quickly chopped down. At the beginning, this blade made an explosive sound of the air being torn apart. However, when it was about to land, the sound gradually weakened. Chopping blade technique. At this time, Ziyue was still using the chopping blade technique, but unknowingly, he had integrated some of the uses of the traceless blade into it. At the same time that the sound disappeared, the force also became more restrained. It was the same chopping blade art, but its might was stronger than before. Puff! When the blade entered the flesh, the sound of the blade light chopping down almost disappeared. Only the muffled sound of flesh and blood being separated could be heard clearly. Zhang Yuchang dead. Looking at the figure of his opponent who had fallen to the ground and been chopped in two, Ziyue could not help but let out a long howl. His gaze instantly fell on the other people of the Ghost Head stronghold. At this moment, except for the dozen or so bandits of the Ghost Head stronghold who had transported the crossbows earlier, there were only 5 people left. They were looking at the fog surrounding Na in surprise. Until Ziyue's howl sounded, their faces suddenly changed. An ominous premonition arose in their hearts. Just as they were about to take action, a figure rushed out like lightning. The blade light was continuously chopped, forming a screen of blades like a barrier. The screen of blades swept across, and flesh and blood splattered everywhere. A minute later, Ziyue's figure stood still on the beach. Behind him, the dense fog of yin energy was slowly dissipating, and the ground was littered with corpses. Not a single person was still alive. As for the 2 eagle, not long after tearing all the yin spirits into pieces, they had also dissipated due to the exhaustion of their spiritual energy. Victory! Ziyue panted lightly, and could not help but reveal a trace of a smile on his face. In the beginning, when facing Zhang Yuchang and the numerous people of the Ghost Head stronghold, Ziyue actually did not have much confidence. Therefore, at the first moment, he thought of escaping. However, when Zhang Yuchang shouted that he could not escape, and when he thought about Zhang Yuchang's method of allowing his fat body to walk in the air and cover more than 10 meters in a flash, he had to admit that it was true. In terms of speed, he really could not compete with the other party. Once he wanted to escape, there was really a possibility that he could not escape. Therefore, he did not hesitate and directly counterattacked. The result was needless to say. Of course, this is also because Zhang Yuchang's refined corpse was already killed by me in advance. Otherwise, with his strength and the numerous bandits of the Ghost Head stronghold, the result would be hard to say. Although Ziyue had won, he was not arrogant. He knew that Zhang Yuchang's strength was actually extremely strong. However, his magical artifacts and celestial spells were not any weaker than the old elementary scholars. In addition to the refined corpse that he had killed, the old scholar could not use the Thunderfall technique, and he would also have a grievance. However, through this battle, I have finally verified the power of the Dharma artifact in my hands. The two eagles should be slightly stronger than an ordinary internal refinement warrior, but not by much. The two of them together should be able to deal with an intermediate internal refinement warrior. As for the swordsman, his strength has reached the late stage of internal refinement. He should be slightly weaker than the chief of the gang, who is at the peak of internal refinement. If I control the two eagle and the swordsman to attack together, they should be able to block the peak of internal refinement warrior for a period of time. Therefore, this Dharma artifact is actually equivalent to giving me the combat power of a peak internal refinement warrior. Ziyue looked at the picture scroll in his hands again, and could not help but reveal a trace of excitement on his face. Although he had previously tried his best to overestimate this Dharma artifact, after all, it was a 24 restriction Dharma artifact. However, he had never imagined that this Dharma artifact would be so powerful. Of course, Ziyue naturally knew that this Dharma artifact also had a natural drawback. That was, this Dharma artifact had an upper limit to its power. It was not like other Dharma artifacts that could explode with greater power as the cultivator's strength increased. It could now display the power of the peak of internal refinement. In the future, it would still be at the peak of internal refinement and could not be improved. However, Ziyue did not care too much about this point. He believed that when that time came, he would naturally have better things on him. In short, he was very satisfied with this Dharma artifact. Chapter 120. Next, it's time to harvest. Ziyue thought to himself and didn't hesitate to reach into Zhang Yuchang's body. Soon, a cloth banner and a large money bag appeared in his hand. Then, he picked up the small sword magic artifact not far from Zhang Yuchang's body. Of these two magic artifacts, the small sword was fine. Ziyue only took a brief look and confirmed that it was the same as his golden thread saber. They were both 15 restriction magic artifacts, which overlapped with him. However, the power of the cloth banner was much more terrifying. 24 restriction magic artifact. This cloth banner is also a 24 restriction magic artifact. It's a Een attribute magic artifact that can gather ghosts and control them to fight against the enemy. However, now that all the Een souls within it have been destroyed, most of the originally dense Een chi has also dissipated in the previous battle, causing its power to be greatly reduced. Only by recollecting the Een chi and condensing Een souls and ghosts can it once again display its power. As Ziyue thought to himself, he carefully put it away. In terms of grade, this magic artifact was equal to the eagle swordsman painting in his hand, so he naturally valued it. Then, Ziyue jumped up and jumped back onto the big ship. On the bow of the ship, corpses were strewn all over the place. However, there were also glittering ingots of gold that were rolling around the ship. It was the 500 taels of gold that the Ghost Head village originally wanted to trade with the Water Immortal. Obviously, in the previous transaction, Zhang Yuchang and the others didn't think of a normal transaction at all. They just took out a box of gold to win the Water Immortal's trust. After the incident, Zhang Yuchang stabbed the Water Immortal to death to prevent him from taking the gold away. Unexpectedly, it was him who benefited in the end. He gathered all the gold and slammed it back into the box. Ziyue frowned slightly. The total amount of gold collected was not more than 500 taels, but only about 370 taels. Obviously, during the battle, someone also took the opportunity to pick up some. Among them should be the few water bandits who had escaped, as well as the people from Ghost Head Stronghold who had left first with the boxes of crossbows and arrows. As expected, Ziyue once again searched through the corpses of the water bandits and mountain bandit. The amount of gold had reached 420 taels. In addition, there were 1 or 2 extraordinary weapons, as well as some relatively valuable jade stones, pills, and other items, which were all put away by him. As for the weapons left behind by the water and mountain bandits, there would be a huge pile of them when gathered together. Moreover, they were all standard weapons that were not very valuable, so he could only choose to abandon them. I have to leave quickly. Otherwise, when the people from the Ghost Head Stronghold return, it will be troublesome. Looking at the corpses scattered on the ground, Ziyue calmed himself down and carried the box of gold away. He wasn't afraid of ordinary bandit. However, there was no lack of experts in the Ghost Head Stronghold. After the battle ended, he noticed that some people from the Ghost Head Stronghold were spying on him from afar. During this period of time, some people must have returned to the Ghost Head Stronghold and called for help. Naturally, he did not want to complicate matters. Ziyue identified the direction, turned his feet, and quickly left as if he was flying. Half an hour later, after confirming that he was far away from the battlefield and that there was no one following him, Ziyue let out a sigh of relief and began to slow down. Other than the money, the biggest benefit for me is the amount of spiritual energy. Only now did Ziyue have the leisure to look at his status panel. Instantly, a row of data appeared in front of him. Name, Ziyue Strength. 19 cannot be improved, Speed. 17 cannot be improved, Physique. 20 cannot be improved, Mind. 9 cannot be improved, Spiritual Power. 1354 can be improved, Martial Arts. Indestructible Vajra Perfect. Vajra Glazed Body cannot be improved, Martial Arts. 18 consecutive strikes, Perfect. Straight Punch, Perfect. Chopping Blade Technique, Complete. Cloud Leap, Perfect. Lancet Blade Technique, can be improved. Heaven Binding Hands, can be improved. Traceless Blade, cannot be improved. Heart Piercing Hammer Technique, cannot be improved. Immortal Technique. Purple Chi Visualization Technique, Level 3. Talisman Technique, Perfect. Magic. Fire Spirit Technique, Perfect. Divine Light Shield, Perfect. Grudge Cleansing Technique, can be improved. Spirit Eye Technique, cannot be improved. Thunderfall Technique, cannot be improved. Spiritual Energy. 30644 inch. My spiritual energy has increased by more than 18,000 points, almost 20,000 points. This is the first time my spiritual energy has exceeded 30,000 points. Ziyue took a deep breath, his eyes revealing a trace of excitement. 30,000 points of spiritual energy was indeed the first time he had reached such a number after obtaining the status panel. Such a sufficient amount of spiritual energy was enough to allow his strength to increase tremendously. If he could cultivate the Vajra Glazed Body to the beginner level, he believed that he would be able to improve it to the perfect level. The perfect level of the Vajra Glazed Body was equivalent to a martial artist at the peak of internal refinement. It's a pity that I haven't reached the beginner level of the Vajra Glazed Body. Even if I want to improve it, I can only wait. However, with such a sufficient amount of spiritual energy, I can also improve in other aspects. Ziyue's gaze immediately turned to the Immortal Technique, Purple Chi Visualization Technique. Ziyue had only obtained the first volume of this immortal technique. It could only allow him to cultivate to the 5th level of Qi refinement before there was no further progress. Now, he had already improved it to the 3rd level. It wasn't that he didn't want to improve it, but that the amount of spiritual energy required to improve this immortal technique had far exceeded his previous limit. Now that he had sufficient spiritual energy, he finally decided to improve this immortal technique. Consumed 11,522 points of spiritual energy to upgrade the purple Qi visualization technique to the 4th level. Upgrade. Slightly gritting his teeth, Ziyue chose to upgrade it. In an instant, Ziyue felt that his understanding and comprehension of the purple Qi visualization technique had increased by a large margin. It was as if he had gone through countless days and nights of cultivation. The dantian in his body was expanding, and wisps of spiritual energy were instantly produced. In the blink of an eye, the amount of spiritual energy in his body had increased from the original 1,000 wisps to 3,000 wisps. 3,000 wisps of spiritual energy made Ziyue himself feel a sense of fullness. Unknowingly, there was a slight change in his body, as if he had become more refined. However, very quickly, Ziyue's qi and blood surged. Under the layers of qi and blood, this refined aura was once again concealed. At a glance, outsiders would only think that he was a martial artist. They wouldn't guess that he was also a cultivator of the immortal technique. The 4th level of the purple qi visualization technique has finally made the spiritual energy in my body more abundant. I also have enough spiritual energy to directly fill up the eagle swordsman portrait in one go. Previously, Ziyue only had a little more than 1,300 points of spiritual energy in his body. If he wanted to fill up the 24 restriction magic artifact, the eagle swordsman portrait, he could only do it twice. Now, he only needed to do it once. Moreover, during a battle, even if the eagle and swordsman he summoned dissipated due to the exhaustion of spiritual energy, he would still have enough energy to summon them again. This would also greatly increase his combat strength. Most importantly, my mind power has also increased by a large margin. It has reached 12 points. Ziyue looked at the attribute panel and saw that his mental strength attribute had increased from 9 points to 12 points. His mind had also become clearer. His observation skills, memory, and sense of danger had all increased by a large margin. Consumed 24,000 points of spiritual energy to upgrade the purple qi visualization technique to the 5th level. After checking the amount of spiritual energy required to upgrade the purple qi visualization technique to the 5th level again, Ziyue decisively chose not to upgrade it. Not to mention that his spiritual energy was already insufficient. Even if he had sufficient spiritual energy, he would still be very careful when making his choice. The consumption of 24,000 points of spiritual energy was not a small number. Consumed 891 points of spiritual energy to upgrade the heaven binding hands to the small mastery. Upgrade. Consumed 2,000 points of spiritual energy to upgrade the heaven binding hands to the great mastery. Upgrade. Consumed 4,000 points of spiritual energy to upgrade the heaven binding hands to the great mastery. Upgrade. Feeling that he still had a lot of spiritual energy, Ziyue thought for a moment and upgraded the heaven binding hands to the great mastery. Instantly, many insights surfaced in his mind, allowing him to completely master this martial skill. At this moment, his understanding of the heaven binding hands had even surpassed his master and had truly reached the great mastery realm. In his hands, the various transformations of the heaven binding hands and the various uses of force could be easily grasped without any stagnation. Consumed 789 points of spiritual energy to upgrade the grudge cleansing technique to the small mastery. Upgrade. After thinking for a moment, Ziyue upgraded the grudge cleansing technique to the small mastery level. The small mastery level of the grudge cleansing technique immediately allowed his understanding and application of this technique to rise to a new level. He quickly visualized the runes in his mind. In an instant, several runes formed and the spiritual energy in his body surged. A green light instantly radiated out and landed on his body. Like a cool breeze, Ziyue's murderous aura, resentment, blood, and many other negative things that were originally entrenched in his body due to killing many people were all eliminated layer by layer. Furthermore, when this technique landed on his body, it seemed to have strengthened his soul, causing his state of mind to become more peaceful. This technique actually had the effect of improving one's state of mind. With this, my spiritual energy is only left with a little over 10,000 points. Ziyue looked at the amount of spiritual energy he had and ultimately resisted the idea of upgrading it. He upgraded the Heaven Binding Hands because he knew that this martial skill was rather powerful and had a huge effect on his strength. He upgraded the Grudge Cleansing Technique because he felt that the resentment and death aura on his body were rather dense. It was difficult to eliminate it all at once by relying on the small mastery level of the Grudge Cleansing Technique. Once he entered Qinghe Town, it would be easy for others to see through him. Therefore, he upgraded the Grudge Cleansing Technique to the next level. As for the other techniques, they either couldn't be upgraded because they hadn't reached the small mastery level, or they wouldn't be of much help to his strength after being upgraded. Naturally, he wasn't willing to waste his spiritual energy on this. Chapter 121. As far as he was concerned, it was more appropriate for him to save the soul energy to improve his Vajra glass body. With this thought in mind, Ziyue did not stop and continued on his way. But soon, Ziyue's footsteps gradually stopped, and his eyes flickered. Bai Ziyue had come on this trip to escort the goods to return Ho Linkuan's favor. However, everything that happened after that made him feel a chill in his heart. If I was just an ordinary warrior, I really wouldn't have been able to come back this time. Even if I hadn't killed Zhang Yuchang to refine the corpse, since the Ghost Head stronghold had decided to tear up the deal, they would never have let me come back. Then, what role did Ho Linkuan play in this matter? Ziyue thought in his heart, and the murderous intent in his eyes gradually thickened. He knew that Ho Linkuan and his housekeeper were definitely aware of this deal, and knowing that this operation was so dangerous, the other party had deliberately concealed it and let him be involved. Their purpose was somewhat thought-provoking. Ziyue did not choose to return to the city directly. He knew that Ho Linkuan must have already sent people to guard the city gate to see if he had returned safely. They must have even sent people to observe the waterways and the river surface. Once he returned safely, the other party would not do anything to harm him. However, they would definitely have follow-up measures to dispel his suspicions. They might even use this as a pretext to threaten him and drag him into the water to help the other party. In terms of tricks, even if Ziyue was far more mature than his peers, he was far from being a match for a sly old fox like Ho Linkuan. However, Ziyue had never thought of feigning civility with the other party. Since the other party dared to scheme against him, they naturally had to bear the consequences of their scheme failing. Therefore, Ziyue simply decided not to enter the city first. Instead of putting himself in the open and facing the other party's schemes, it was better to hide in the dark, which would be more convenient for him to act. Night gradually fell. Perhaps the commoners felt that the recent atmosphere was a little strange, and the flow of people in and out of the city gate was much less than usual. Seeing that the time had come, and there were no traces of pedestrians on either side of the city gate, an officer called out, and 2 officers immediately closed the city gate slowly, latched the door, and officially closed it. Seeing that the city gate was completely closed, the officers gradually left. In the corner behind a stone block, a figure was limping quickly into the city. However, they didn't notice that a huge eagle had appeared in the sky at some point in time. The eagle circled in the air for a moment, and like a bolt of lightning, it rushed through the city gate and entered the depths of Qinghe Town. Are you sure that Bai Ziue didn't return until the city gates closed? In Ho Lin Kuan's residence, old, and was the housekeeper's question. Yes, he was the housekeeper was, if Ziue he not was not. I am sure that he is not back yet. Below, Sun Nong said in a confident tone. Okay, I got it. You may leave. Above, old Mr. Ho nodded and said calmly. I think you know what to say and what not to say. You don't need me to teach you, do you? Steward Su, who was beside him, warned him repeatedly, his eyes full of coldness. Yes, I understand. I don't know anything. Sun Nong had a hunch that something was going to happen. His heart trembled and he nodded repeatedly. Seeing that Sun Nong had left, Ho Lin Kuan said with a smile, Sun Nong has no other ability, and he is very timid. However, he is also very tight-lipped. He will not care about anything that has nothing to do with him. Don't worry. Even if he finds out something, he will not dare to say it out loud. Not to mention that he has not found anything yet. Master, of course I know his personality. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked him to keep an eye on them. However, Steward Su paused for a moment before continuing, since Ziue didn't come back from the city gate, and someone reported that they didn't see any traces of him on the waterway, then their trip may be, wait a little longer. Ho Lin Kuan said in a deep voice. Therefore, the scene quieted down again, and Steward Su also left. About an hour later, Steward Su appeared in the room again, and said anxiously, I just received news that the village of the Reed Marsh has been razed to the ground. The flames started and haven't been extinguished yet. In addition, after the Water Immortal and the others went out, they never returned. I reckon that they are probably dead. In this case, it seems that Ziue won't be able to escape this calamity. Really? As expected of the Ghost Head village. They are ruthless. This time they came to me. Fortunately, I pushed the blame to the Water Immortal. Otherwise, we would all have been implicated. As for that Ziue, I can only say that he is unlucky. If he were still alive, I would have taken advantage of this matter to take him under my wing and use him as a sharp knife. Ho Lin Kuan said with a trace of regret in his tone, but he also seemed to be relieved. There was a carefree expression on his face, as if he could control life and death. That's because he didn't have the fortune. Besides, if he hadn't refused the master's order, how could he have ended up like this? It's just that he lost the identity of an outstanding disciple, but at least he could still be alive. It's not like the master didn't give him any benefits. Now, not only is he dead, his identity will probably fall on young Master Li in the end. How sad. Steward Su hurriedly flattered him, looking very regretful. Humph, you haven't done much for me, and you want to jump out of my control. How can there be such a good thing? This is good. You can report to the Left Protector tomorrow that Ziue is dead. I think he will be very happy to hear the news. Ho Lin Kuan ordered. Is that so? At this moment, a cold voice suddenly sounded from outside the door. Who is it? Steward Su's face changed drastically, and he stood up in an instant. Ho Lin Kuan's somewhat aged body also trembled, and his expression became unsightly. Ziue, you're not dead? Looking at the figure walking in step by step, Steward Su's face was full of disbelief. You're really surprised to see that I'm fine. Ziue shook his head and said with emotion. He didn't expect that as soon as he entered Ho Lin Kuan's mansion, he would happen to hear their conversation, which solved all the doubts in his heart. This is not an accident, it's a surprise. We didn't expect that such a big change would happen in this normal transaction. For this reason, we specially sent people to guard the city gate and the river. Now that we see you come back safely, of course we're happy. Come, it's still early. I'll ask someone to prepare a table of good dishes to welcome you back. Ho Lin Kuan, after all, had been through storms and waves, quickly calmed down and spoke quickly. His old face was full of sincerity. What a sharp tongue you have. You can even turn black into white. Ziue sneered and said, I, Ziue, am not the kind of person who doesn't care about old feelings. When I was insignificant, I did owe old Mr. Ho a favor. I'm willing to return the favor. It's a pity that my kindness is regarded as ill intent. What are you going to do? Ho Linkuan's heart sank. He suddenly knew that their conversation had been heard by Ziue, so he no longer quibbled and said sternly, Ziue, I advise you not to act rashly. Have you thought about the consequences of making a move in the town? Moreover, with your strength, do you really think you can get away with it? You don't think that I'm just an ordinary steward, do you? Steward Su's tone was cold and threatening. As he spoke, he released his aura and his momentum soared. The rich power of qi and blood was revealed, far surpassing that of a martial artist at the peak of outer forging. He was in the internal refining realm, and he was not a martial artist who had just entered the realm like Zhang Bo. He had already completed the training of his 5 viscera and was beginning to temper his 6 viscera. Is that so? But you're underestimating me, Ziue. Ziue's expression did not change. A cloth banner suddenly appeared in his hand and he waved it slightly. In the blink of an eye, a rich Yin energy spread out and enveloped the entire hall. What's this? What's going on? Steward Su's panicked voice rang out. Under the encirclement of the Yin Qi, his eyes could not see anything. He was horrified to find that even his power of Qi and blood was gradually being worn down by the turbulent Yin Qi. Magic weapon. Is this a magic weapon? You? Ho Linkuan's calm expression changed in an instant. He became extremely panicked and terrified. Since Bai Ziue was in possession of a dermic artifact, his identity was obvious. He was a cultivator of the way of immortality. Ziue was actually a cultivator of the way of immortality? It seems that you're quite knowledgeable. Under the encirclement of the Yin Qi, I can't see anything or make a sound. It won't attract anyone's attention, so I can send you on your way. Bai Ziue said slowly. Then, he reached behind his back and took out a scroll. Aren't you afraid of being found out? Many people have seen you enter and leave my mansion before. Ho Linkuan's expression changed. As he spoke, he quickly fumbled around. He quickly picked up a pipe pot and carefully judged Ziue's position. No one will find out, because I'm not going to enter the city until tomorrow. As Bai Ziue spoke, he stretched out his hand and tapped lightly on the painting. A light flashed on the scroll, and then a swordsman with a blurry face and a sword case on his back suddenly appeared. As soon as the swordsman appeared, he disappeared on the spot like a flash of lightning. At this moment, Ho Linkuan's eyes hardened. A beam of light suddenly shot out from the pipe pot, and an extremely small golden needle suddenly shot out. Chapter 122. Hidden Weapon. Ho Linkuan was not proficient in martial arts, so he had spent a lot of effort on other aspects. He had asked a skilled craftsman to make this concealed weapon for him to use as a form of self-defense. However, as soon as the golden needle shot out, a ray of sword light descended. With a swoosh and a flash of light, the golden needle broke. Immediately after, the sword light flashed again. Steward Su, who was a little surprised and planning to escape, felt a chill on his neck. A thin line of blood flowed out from his neck. When he wanted to turn his neck, with a sizzling sound, his neck fell off and rolled on the ground. Ho Linkuan heard the movement beside him and was frightened. He hurriedly raised his pipe pot again, only to see a flash of light in front of his eyes. When the light disappeared from his eyes, he felt a pain in his chest. Then, endless darkness invaded him. Naturally, the pipe pot fell to the ground. With a bang, the golden needle shot out and shot into the ground, deeply embedding itself in it. If you knew this would happen, why did you do it in the first place? Ziue sighed softly. He pointed at the painting again, and the figure of the swordsman gradually disappeared. The cloth banner trembled slightly, and the endless fog of yin qi was absorbed into it. Then, he turned around and left. West of Qinghe town, in the graveyard. After Ziyue killed Ho Linquan and Steward Su, he did not leave the town directly. Instead, he came to the graveyard. Perhaps it was because he was skilled and daring, but now he directly entered the center of the graveyard and lit a soul-luring incense. Wisps of smoke dispersed. Not long after, Ziyue felt that there were ghosts crawling out from the ground. If it were any other time, Bai Ziyue would naturally have already made his move and killed these ghosts. However, this time, Bai Ziyue merely stood where he was. He reached into his bosom and took out a banner. Soul Amassing Banner. This cloth banner was none other than Zhang Yuchang's magic weapon, the Soul Converging Banner. For the entire afternoon, other than patiently waiting for night to fall, Ziyue had been refining the 24 restriction magic artifact. The moment he refined the artifact, he understood its function and its name. It was the Soul Converging Banner. The Soul Converging Banner trembled slightly, and a huge suction force emerged from it. Very quickly, a ghost that was more than 10 meters away from Ziyue turned into a stream of light and entered the Soul Amassing Flag without even struggling. After that, Ziyue could clearly feel that the power of the Soul Amassing Banner seemed to have grown stronger. This Soul Converging Flag itself doesn't have much power. All of its power is provided by the Yin souls that are absorbed and refined within it. The more Yin souls there are, the stronger the Yin souls are, and the more powerful the magic tool will be. It's just that these Yin souls are so weak that they aren't even as strong as an external martial artist. They can't increase the power of the Soul Amassing Banner by much. As Ziyue thought to himself, he still tirelessly absorbed all the ghosts with the help of the Soul Amassing Banner when the Yin souls were attracted by the soul-luring incense. Very quickly, Ziyue sensed that there were many more Yin souls in the Soul Amassing Banner. The weakest of these Yin souls was equivalent to the little ghost that Ziyue had encountered before. They would be scattered if they were hit by the power of a martial artist's qi and blood. The strongest one was only equivalent to the female ghost that Ziyue had encountered at his aunt's house. Although it had some tricks up its sleeve, it didn't have much power. Fortunately, there were so many of them that the Soul Amassing Banner faintly felt a trace of fullness. The power of this Soul Amassing Banner doesn't depend on the number of Yin souls it has. It doesn't differentiate between primary and secondary and is difficult to control. As Ziyue thought to himself, the spirit power in his body surged once again. In an instant, the hundreds of Yin souls that had been absorbed suddenly went crazy. They began to bite and devour each other. This was the Soul Amassing Banner's innate ability. It allowed the Yin souls to devour each other, just like raising poisonous insects. In the end, only the strongest one would be left. At that time, although the number of Yin souls would be reduced, the strength of the remaining Yin soul would far surpass that of the previous Yin soul. Naturally, it would become one of the primary souls of the Soul Amassing Banner. The Soul Amassing Banner, which was a 24 restriction magic tool, meant that it could accommodate a total of 24 primary souls. Even if each primary soul was limited by the magic tool's material and could only withstand a Yin soul that was equivalent to a peak external martial artist's strength, once all of them were released, it would be enough to make a peak internal martial artist or even an internal martial artist retreat. With this thought in mind, only one of the hundreds of ghosts was left in the Soul Amassing Banner. This was a ghost that looked thin, but his soul was almost solid. His eyes were fierce and ruthless, like the most ferocious evil spirit in the world, ferocious and terrifying. Based on the degree of its soul's solidification, I reckon that an external martial artist wouldn't be a match for it. Looking at this Yin soul, Ziyue was satisfied. This was only one primary soul. When 24 primary souls were released together, the scene would certainly cover the sky and cover the sun. It was just like how Zhang Yuchang had commanded the ghosts to charge at him. Since it's the first primary soul, I'll give you a good fortune. Let's see how far you can go. Ziyue's heart suddenly moved. He thought of the refined corpse he had killed a few days ago and the corpse pearl he had extracted from its head. The corpse pearl was perfectly round, but it was actually very hard. In addition, it contained a terrifying inattribute energy. It could definitely be considered a rare inattribute treasure. Thinking that he had no use for it, he thought that it would be better to see what changes would occur after the primary soul devoured the corpse pearl. Thus, without hesitation, he reached into his money pouch and fished out a porcelain bottle. With a light squeeze, the porcelain bottle shattered, revealing the corpse pearl inside. With a slight toss, the corpse pearl turned into an arc and fell into the soul-amassing banner. The moment the primary soul sensed the corpse bead approaching, its entire soul body shook and revealed an excited expression. It let out a roar that sounded like a roar. The primary soul rushed in front of the corpse bead and swallowed it in one gulp. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The sound of the soul trembling violently came out from the soul-amassing banner. Immediately after, the soul's aura rose steadily like a hot knife through butter. In the blink of an eye, it rose to the level of a peak external martial artist. Roar! The Yin soul let out an excited roar as if it was showing off its strength. Continue! Ziyue glanced at the soul-guiding incense that had burned out. Soon, he went to a high slope and lit another stick of soul-guiding incense. After a while, many Yin souls were attracted by the soul-guiding incense. Then, they flowed into the soul-amassing banner and became its nourishment. Almost every once in a while, Ziyue would change his position. As the moon gradually set in the sky, there were already 6 primary souls on Ziyue's soul-amassing banner. The strongest among them was naturally the one that had devoured the corpse pearl at the beginning. Ziyue named it Big Spirit Boss. It already had the strength of a martial artist at the peak of outer forging. The rest were Big Spirit Boss 2, Big Spirit Boss 3, and so on. They were slightly weaker and had the combat strength of a martial artist at outer forging. These primary souls had ferocious and terrifying auras. They were like ferocious beasts that had been starved for a long time. Once released, they would be able to erupt with combat strength that far surpassed their own. This way, the soul-amassing banner in my hand should be able to display some of its power. Ziyue waved his hand in satisfaction. Under the control of the soul-amassing banner, the 6 primary souls obediently turned into flowing light and returned to the banner. It's a pity that the Yin souls in the soul-amassing banner devouring each other can't increase my soul energy. Otherwise, with the number of Yin souls that died today, even if their individual strength wasn't strong, it would be enough to increase my soul energy by a few thousand points. However, with today's crazy absorption of Yin souls into the soul-amassing banner, I reckon that there won't be any Yin souls in this graveyard for a long time. With a slight sigh, Ziyue finally put away the soul-amassing banner. Immediately after, a scroll appeared in his hand. He reached out and tapped on the scroll. In an instant, a huge eagle appeared in front of him out of thin air. It was the effect of the summoning magic treasure, the Eagle Swordsman portrait. Without much hesitation, Ziyue jumped onto the eagle's back and grabbed its neck tightly. Even though the eagle that was summoned was still a little different from the real thing, but regardless of its appearance or the degree of solidification, it was already not much different from a real eagle. Howl! An astonishing eagle's cry was heard. The eagle's body stretched out like a rock, spreading its wings. It quickly soared into the sky and turned into a flowing light, disappearing from the spot. The whistling sound of the wind passed through his ears. Feeling the thrill and excitement of flying in the air, and the sense of accomplishment of being able to trample everything under his feet, he felt boundless joy in his heart. He was filled with boundless yearning to truly be able to fly in the air. In less than a minute, Ziyue rode the eagle and appeared on top of a mountain. Just as he jumped off the eagle's back, the eagle directly turned into powder and disappeared from the spot because of the exhaustion of its spiritual power. It's a pity that if it's just flying, this eagle can only maintain it for 60 seconds, or even less. Otherwise, with this eagle, I can really have a good time swimming in the void. Ziyue sighed in his heart. He valued this eagle swordsman portrait even more. Even though this eagle could only help him fly for a short period of time, its speed still made him extremely amazed. If he was in a hurry, it was really much more convenient. For example, now, in less than a minute, he had already crossed at least a dozen miles. If not for taking care of him, Ziyue deliberately slowed down the eagle's speed so that he could cross even further. Chapter 123. Stepping on solid ground, Ziyue took a deep breath and identified the direction. Soon, he came to a slightly dilapidated mountain temple. This mountain temple was desolate and dilapidated. It was obvious that no one had taken care of it for a long time. Ziyue stepped directly into the mountain temple and walked to the side of a scholarly idol with his hands slightly raised, as if he was bowing. With a light touch of one hand, he moved the idol away. The 50-kilogram idol was as light as a feather to Ziyue at this time. Soon, a square-shaped wooden box was revealed under the statue. It was the box of gold that he had deliberately hidden during the day. He kicked the wooden box slightly. Under the control of a strong force, the wooden box flew out and landed steadily beside him. Opening the wooden box, there were some money bags, a small sword, a few jade pendants of good quality, a few bottles of qi and blood elixirs, vitality elixirs, and layers of gold stacked below. Seeing that there was nothing missing, Ziyue poured out the contents of the money bags one by one. Many of them were pieces of silver and there were many copper coins. In the end, Ziyue picked up a bulging money bag. This money bag belonged to Zhang Yuchang, the disciple of the fifth channel head. Previously, in order to quickly refine and control the soul-amassing banner, he did not have time to tidy it up. Now that he had time, he naturally could not help but tidy it up. He untied the rope and poured out the contents of the money bag. A banknote, a dozen taels of silver, and 2 bottles of elixirs. What is this? Ziyue sorted them out one by one, and his eyes lit up quickly. From the pile of things, he picked up a greenish-white stone the size of a baby's fist. This greenish-white stone looked inconspicuous, but Ziyue could clearly feel a kind of spirituality from it. It was as if this stone contained some kind of energy. Could this be the legendary spirit stone? Ziyue's heart skipped a beat, and he could not help but use his mental strength to invade it. In the blink of an eye, he could feel that the stone was densely packed with strands of spiritual qi. Although it was just a small piece, the total amount of spiritual energy had reached tens of thousands of strands. Ziyue tried to guide the spirit qi. With just a slight turn, dozens of strands of spirit qi were absorbed into his body. However, at least a large portion of it directly dissipated into the air. After the transformation, the 100 strands of spiritual qi finally fused into one spiritual qi and entered his dantian. It really is a spirit stone. If I convert all of it into spirit stones, I should be able to increase my spirit qi by dozens of spirit stones. However, it was a little too extravagant for cultivation. Absorbing it will waste more than half of it, so it's better to use it to recover spiritual energy during battle. It's more efficient and less wasteful. Ziyue had heard about the effects of the spirit stone from the old elementary scholar. If the old elementary scholar had possessed the spirit stone when he had hunted the locust tree spirit, he believed that he would not have had to wait so long to use the invocation of the spirit. He could even cast the lightning fall technique directly with the help of the spirit stones. It was much easier and more convenient. From this, it could be seen how precious the spirit stone was. Ziyue did not expect that Zhang Yuchang would have spirit stones on him. Of course, it was not a lot. He counted and found that there were only 5 of them. Among them, more than half of the spirit qi in one of the spirit stones had been consumed. However, I have to say that this is a big gain. Moreover, apart from the spirit stones, these 2 bottles of spirit recovery pills are definitely good stuff. Ziua looked at the many pills in the 2 porcelain bottles and could not help but smile. Like the mind-gathering incense, the spirit recovery pill was also a type of spirit recovery pill. Moreover, its effect was more direct. It could recover a large portion of one's spirit recovery pill in a short period of time and could be of great use in battle. As for the other items, Ziua estimated that there should be more than 300 taels of silver. Most of it was Zhang Yuchang's banknote. Apart from that, there were some jade stones and other items, which were worth a few dozen taels of silver. In the end, there was a total of 420 taels of gold, which was 4,200 taels of silver. This was equivalent to his gain of 4,600 taels of silver. This did not include the Dharma artifacts and spirit stones that were hard to value. A big gain. Ziua took a deep breath and suppressed his excitement. With so much silver, he also had more confidence. He could easily arrange his parents' lives and let them enjoy a lifetime of wealth. As for him, he could truly step into the county town, or even the prefecture capital and other vast places without any worries. Early in the morning, Ziua was dressed in martial attire. He specially found a cloth bag and wrapped the chest before carrying it to the city gate of Qinghe town. Along the way, Ziua only needed to listen for a while to hear the discussions of countless people. The water bandits entrenched in the reed marsh have been trampled. I heard that the Wu village, the Li village, and the Lujiabao were all ransacked by the Ghost Head stronghold yesterday. I heard that in those villages, the men were basically slaughtered and many of the women were directly taken to the Ghost Head stronghold. In the future, Sai, this world is really sinful. Something happened in our town today. Old Mr. Ho of the Scorching Sun Gang and his housekeeper were found dead in their own home this morning. News after news came into Ziua's ears, which made him raise his eyebrows slightly. Among them, Ho Linquan and Steward Su were naturally killed by him. Because he had driven the eagle swordsman portrait and borrowed the power of the swordsman, Ziua believed that no one would suspect him. After all, everyone knew that he was good at saber techniques and had never shown his swordsmanship. As for the other 2, the water bandits in the reed marsh, presumably the water immortal's subordinates, were killed. Ziua guessed that in addition to the Ghost Head stronghold's anger over Zhang Yuchang's death, it was also because they wanted to get back the deposit of 500 taels of gold they had previously given. In this regard, Ziua could only sigh. Making a deal with the Ghost Head stronghold was tantamount to asking a tiger for its skin. It was really a dead end. Of course, those water bandits couldn't be good people either. He wouldn't care even if the 2 sides fought to the death. However, the ransacking of the Wu village, the Li village, and the Lujiabao made him a little confused. In the past, although the Ghost Head stronghold would block the road and rob people, they rarely attacked villages directly. Firstly, there were very few windfalls in the villages, which was a bit of a thankless task. Secondly, many of the bandits in the nearby mountains were actually people from some villages who had abandoned their homes. It was inevitable that there would be relatives between the villages. There were very few people who were truly inhumane and robbed and killed their relatives. However, the actions of the Ghost Head stronghold this time seemed a bit crazy. However, Ziua thought of the recent strange situation in Qinghe town and had some guesses in his heart. No matter what, the government has already formed the general trend. Now that the Ghost Head stronghold has just sent the hilts, I reckon that soon, a huge bandit suppression operation will officially begin. This time, if the Ghost Head stronghold can't be taken down, I reckon that for at least 10 years, no one will dare to mention the matter of suppressing bandits again. Ziua analyzed in his heart and frowned. The upper echelons of the imperial court were in turmoil, and their control over the counties and towns below them was weakened. Naturally, no one would be willing to do such a thankless task as suppressing bandit. This time, Li Hun and Li Jubo had a reason to take action. Otherwise, it would be almost impossible for Wujiang County or even higher-ups to come out and suppress the bandit. If they failed this time, it would really be a huge blow to the people. Thinking of the military equipment, Ziyue's heart trembled, and he quickened his pace again. Although at least half of them had been destroyed by his spiritual fire skill, there were still some left. The power of the military equipment was so great that even a martial artist at the peak of the outer forging would have to be cautious when facing it. Therefore, he had to do something to make up for it. At least, he had to let the government take precautions. Naturally, there was no obstruction on the way, and Ziyue went straight back to his residence. Hearing the sound of Ziyue's return, the little dog, who had been hungry for a day, rushed over, barking. When it saw Ziyue, it suddenly stopped, lifted its head, and showed a dissatisfied look. It turned around and stepped into the room again. It seemed that it ran out, not to welcome Ziyue, but to show its existence and let Ziyue know that it was hungry. Thud! Ziyue put down the wooden box. The heavy sound startled the little dog. It was about to cross the threshold, but its body rolled in a circle. When it saw that Ziyue did not notice it, it stood up majestically and kicked the threshold with one leg. It was very vengeful. It whimpered. This kick happened to hit its injured leg. It had not recovered fully, and it was in so much pain that tears flowed out. Ziyue did not intend to pay attention to that stupid dog. After putting the box away, he did not have time to cook the snake meat for it. He threw down a few meat buns that he bought along the way and walked out of the room again. Awoo! When it saw the meat buns, the little dog could not help but go closer. However, it was very dissatisfied with the snake demon meat. It wanted to not eat it, but it could not suppress the hunger in its stomach. With a look of disdain, it bit down on the meat buns. So delicious! After leaving the house, Ziyue turned around and went straight to the sect leader's mansion. After thinking for a while, he decided to give his master some reminders. He was the only one who could have a certain influence on this bandit suppression. Soon, Ziyue's figure appeared at the entrance of his master's mansion. At the entrance, there was a luxurious carriage parked at the side. A person who looked like a coachman was holding some fodder and carefully feeding the horses. In that luxurious carriage, even from a distance, he could smell a smell like incense. This incense smell was very unique. Ziyue felt that it was somewhat familiar, as if he had smelled it before. However, after thinking for a long time, he still could not remember where he had smelled this unique incense. Chapter 124. Muttering to himself, Ziyue could only ignore it for now and knock on the door. The gatekeeper naturally knew who Ziyue was. He didn't stop him at all and let him in. As soon as he entered the hall, he saw his master and an old man in a Taoist robe with a strong fragrance of incense. They were chatting happily. "It's him, Taoist Wudong." Ziyue's heart skipped a beat. Only then did he remember when he had smelled this incense. During the birthday banquet 3 years ago, Taoist Wudong had carried this unique fragrance. He did not realize it before, but when he thought of his identity as an immortal cultivator and his status as the master of Wu Hao and Zhang Yuchang, his motive was very obvious. Cover up the smell. Whether it was Wu Hao or Zhang Yuchang, they were more or less stained with the stench of corpses because they had refined corpses. As their master, Taoist Wudong must have refined a refined corpse. If he did not cover it up, it would be very easy for others to discover it. This did not match his reputation in the entire Qinghe town. Therefore, he specially used this kind of incense to cover up the smell of refined corpses on his body. Master Taoist Wudong. Although Ziyue had many thoughts in his mind, he still stood at the side of the road and bowed slightly. At this moment, his body was a little tense. He was not sure if Taoist Wudong knew about the death of his disciple, Zhang Yuchang. If he knew, would he be sure that the murderer was Ziyue? "This is your disciple, right? He's a talent indeed." Taoist Wudong looked at Ziyue with a hint of approval in his eyes. "You're too kind, Taoist Wudong." Ziyue let out a long sigh of relief and quickly said. Obviously, the news of Zhang Yuchang's death had not reached his ears yet. Naturally, he did not know that he was the one who killed him. However, Taoist Wudong's praise made his expression become a little strange. In detail, Ziyue and Taoist Wudong were fated to meet. The two disciples of the other party had died at his hands. She wondered what kind of expression he would have when he found out the truth. Of course, he would not reveal it himself. It's just an estimate. It won't take long. Ziyue's heart tightened as a strong sense of crisis descended upon him. Haha, I can't compare to your disciple. Now, he can already take charge. I heard that not long ago, he even went out of his way to capture and kill the malicious spirit that was causing trouble in the Hu clan. He is indeed extraordinary. Lu Dong laughed and said humbly. Haha, it's just a small fight. Taoist Wudong was also in a good mood. Ziyue lowered his head and didn't say anything. At this time, he naturally didn't dare to say anything. All right, it's settled then. When the time comes, we'll have to rely on Lu Menju. Taoist Wudong suddenly said with a serious face. I'm the one who's relying on you. Lu Dong said politely. Then, the two of them cupped their hands and bade each other farewell. After Taoist Wudong left, Ziyue asked curiously, Master, I wonder why Taoist Wudong is here this time? Naturally, it's about the encirclement of the Ghost Head stronghold. Lu Dong said softly. Taoist Wudong will go with them? Ziyue suddenly became anxious. Through various signs, Ziyue was very sure that Taoist Wudong must be related to the Ghost Head stronghold. At least one of his junior brothers was a member of the Ghost Head stronghold. It was very likely that he was the mysterious chieftain of the Ghost Head stronghold. If they were going to the Ghost Head stronghold, it would be hard to tell whether they were friends or foes. Of course, Lord Li is making a big move this time. Not only Taoist Wudong, but our Scorching Sun gang will also be mobilized. Taoist Wudong is here to discuss the matter of joining forces against the enemy with me. After all, the chieftain of the Ghost Head stronghold has unfathomable strength. We naturally have to make more preparations. Lu Dong didn't hide anything and said directly. But I heard that Taoist Wudong seems to have some connections with the Ghost Head stronghold. I feel that it's best if Master doesn't go with them. Even if you do, you have to be on your guard and be careful of their counterattack. Ziyue's face turned serious as he said seriously. Who did you hear this from? Don't speak nonsense. Taoist Wudong is above worldly affairs in Qinghe town. How could he have any connections with the Ghost Head stronghold? Lu Dong first reprimanded him severely, then his expression softened as he said, But what you said is not without reason. It's always right to be careful in the Jianghu. I'll pay attention when the time comes. That's right, I heard that the Ghost Head stronghold seems to have made some connections and obtained a batch of military equipment. Ziyue pretended to speak carelessly. Military equipment? I already know about this matter. Don't speak carelessly when you're outside. No matter what it is, it will be very troublesome if the military is involved. Lu Dong nodded. He clearly didn't want to delve into this matter. Your disciple understands. Seeing that his master didn't pay enough attention to this matter, Ziyue felt a little helpless. However, it wasn't good for him to continue speaking. He could only ask, when will the suppression of the bandits begin? Tomorrow, Lu Dong said in a low voice. So soon? Hearing this, Ziyue's heart shook as he exclaimed. Early the next morning, all the people in Qinghe town were mobilized. Nearly half of the government's soldiers and the officers that Lord Li brought this time all gathered at the city gate. Qinghe town's Scorching Sun gang branch also mobilized 150 disciples and gathered at the side. In addition to the various squires, wealthy merchants, Tai Yi Dojo, Zhenwu Escort Agency, and other forces in the town, there were over 500 people in total. Ziua stood among them and didn't stand out. No matter who it was, they all had their own selfish motive. Originally, Ziua's master didn't want him to participate in the suppression of the bandits this time. However, the gang naturally had its own rules. For this kind of large-scale gang activity, as an inner disciple, they had to participate. Therefore, other than those who were indeed injured, all the inner disciples in the gang were included. In addition to the various managers, the gang leader, and the protectors, just the surging chi and blood energy gathered was enough to stir the heavens and earth. At the scene, only the aura formed by Lord Li and the dozens of officers could compare. Through observation, Ziua also discovered that these officers seemed to have mastered a special method of combining chi and blood. Although the strength of their chi and blood was far from the Scorching Sun Gang's, they were able to completely combine their chi and blood together. The aura was shocking. Brother Bai, this time it's really a big event. Our Scorching Sun Gang's gang leader, 2 protectors, and 3 powerhouses above the inner realm. There's also Lord Yang, the head of the Wuwei escort agency. Also, I heard that General Su He, who Lord Li brought over this time, is also in the inner realm. There's also that stained hand Li Yu. I heard that he was a powerhouse who could compete with the gang leader. In total, there are a total of 7 inner realm martial artists. It's really a gathering of powerhouses. On the side, Qin Xiaoping said with a face full of surprise. In fact, it's not just that. Don't forget, there's also that black-robed elder accompanying Lord Li. I heard that he's a powerful immortal master. In addition, there's also the famous Chief Wu of Qinghe Town. It's said that he'll also be coming. Adding them all up, there are 9 great experts. Tong Zhan slowly shook his head and said. Hearing this, Ziua also looked at the black-robed elder beside Lord Li. Because of his relationship with his master, Lu Dong, he actually knew more than Tong Zhan. He knew that this black-robed elder was called Gong Wanquan and was a Qi-refining stage 6 immortal master. In terms of realm, he was 1 level higher than the old scholar. Presumably, his strength was definitely not weak. However, what really made Ziua fearful was the Chief Wu of Qinghe Town, who was talking to him. This person was the biggest variable in this operation. However, his words carried little weight. Even if he specifically reminded his master, it still did not attract his attention. If he said anything more, it would be easy to arouse his suspicions. Therefore, he could only suppress it. In his heart, he also made up his mind. In the following operation, he would definitely stay far away from him. He would definitely not seek his own death by getting close to him. Otherwise, if he suddenly counterattacked, or if the other party suddenly received news that his disciple had died in his hands, he would be finished. He did not think that with his current strength, he would be a match for Chief Wu of Qinghe Town. In addition to us 5 supervisors and other powerhouses at the peak of inner refinement, there are countless powerhouses. Isn't this overestimating the Ghost Head village? Qin Xiaoping sucked in a breath of cold air and said, They won't really mobilize so many people. Lord Li will not be so inconsiderate when he is helping them. Once the Ghost Head village gives up on the mountain stronghold and attacks the town, won't the gains not make up for the losses? Moreover, we also have to guard against the water bandits' counterattack. Unknowingly, a burly man who saw the situation came over and explained with a smile. Uncle Ming. When Ziua saw the person who came, his eyes lit up and he hurriedly greeted him. The gang leader is a little worried about your safety. He knows about our relationship, so he deliberately asked me to go with you. Su Ming explained with a smile. He also did not expect that what he did in passing back then would allow Lin Ming to soar to the sky and become an outstanding disciple in the gang. As for himself, because of Ziua's support, he was promoted to the position of supervisor of the dock a year ago. His status, position, and money had all improved tremendously. Therefore, he was somewhat grateful to Ziua. Because of this, when the gang leader asked him to come and protect them, he agreed without hesitation. That's great. With Supervisor Su by our side, we will be much safer. Tong Zhan would like to thank Supervisor Su. Tong Zhan hurriedly expressed his gratitude. Thank you, Supervisor Su. Qin Xiaoping also greeted him. Then, he asked with some suspicion, will the water bandits make a move at this time? Chapter 125. Of course. Su Ming nodded and said, this time, Lordly has made such a big move. The people of the Ghost Head stronghold are not fools. Naturally, they will not sit still and wait for death. I heard that the Ghost Head stronghold has been making moves recently. They have wiped out almost all the bandits nearby and absorbed a large number of bandits. Their strength has greatly increased. As for the water bandits, they should cooperate with the Ghost Head stronghold and attack Qinghe Town. Therefore, Lordly naturally has to leave enough people to protect Qinghe Town. Tong Zhan nodded in agreement and said, Qinghe Town is the foundation. If Qinghe Town is lost, then even if we successfully wipe out the Ghost Head stronghold, it will still be a failure. Hearing this, Qin Xiaoping finally understood. As for Ziyue, his heart was calm at this moment. For this operation, he only had the idea of killing enemies if he could and hiding if he could not. Anyway, if strong enemies came, there would be tall people to hold them off. He only needed to protect his own safety. He did not even think of standing out. On the other hand, if there really were water bandits attacking Qinghe Town, he would be a little worried. However, thinking that he had already settled his parents and relatives down and ensured that even if something happened, it would not affect them, he gradually calmed down. Soon, the various leaders in front seemed to have finished their discussion. With a command, everyone left Qinghe Town in a mighty manner and headed towards the Ghost Head stronghold on the Ghost Head Mountain 20 miles away. At this moment, Ziyue and the others naturally discovered the number of experts and the number of people accompanying them. Qinghe Town's guardian Yang Zhengling, Scorching Sun Gang's chief Lu Dong, Left Protector Zhao Jing, Stained Hand Li Yu, General Su He and the 5 channel chiefs who practice immortal techniques, a total of 6 experts are attacking together. In addition, there are 9 famous peak inner refinement realm experts in Qinghe Town. It should be enough to wipe out the Ghost Head stronghold. Looking at the experts walking in front, Qin Xiaoping said with slight excitement. This time, the destruction of the Ghost Head stronghold is inevitable. However, whether or not he could wipe them all out was uncertain. After all, the abilities of the 3 bandit chiefs are not weak. Just the 3rd bandit chief is already at Qi realm, and with the 2nd bandit chief, it is said that he has reached the level of a 3rd-rate fighter. That's not even mentioning the mysterious and unfathomable 1st bandit chief, who is definitely the strongest. Su Ming sighed and said, it's not certain whether we can win or not. Ziyue sighed and glanced at Taoist Wudong, who had a calm expression on his face. Ghost Head Mountain was right next to the official road. It was not as steep as outsiders thought. Of course, it wasn't a flat land either. This was because there was only one mountain path that led to the top of the mountain and to the Ghost Head stronghold. This mountain path was not only rugged and difficult to traverse, it was also filled with all kinds of traps. Other than the people from the Ghost Head stronghold, ordinary people would find it extremely difficult to pass through. It was unknown when, under the leadership of the garrison Yang Zhengling, a group of more than 500 people had arrived at the foot of the Ghost Head Mountain of the Ghost Head stronghold. The next path won't be easy to traverse. The last bandit extermination was also on this mountain path. We lost more than 20 people before we reached the entrance of the Ghost Head stronghold. Standing at the foot of the mountain, a soldier said with a flicker in his eyes. This person was one of the veterans who had participated in the previous extermination of the Ghost Head stronghold. He had a deep impression of this mountain path. When the others heard this, their hearts sank. If more than 20 of their subordinates were killed or injured before the battle had even begun, it would be a huge blow to their morale. Is that so? However, it's naturally different this time. Not only are the people accompanying us stronger, but we've also learned our lesson. Naturally, we're prepared. The garrison Yang Zhengling looked at the soldier indifferently and said, "Bring them up." Soon, 2 young men with tan faces walked to the front. "Next, we'll have to rely on you. If you can bring us up to the top of the mountain, you'll naturally make up for your mistakes and regain your freedom." Yang Zhengling looked at the 2 of them and promised. These 2 were the bandits from the Ghost Head stronghold who did not manage to escape in time after the 3rd master of the Ghost Head stronghold massacred the men from the ancient Rhythm Pavilion. "Don't worry, sir. We know what to do," one of them said solemnly. The other person nodded his head repeatedly and looked at Lin Fan with respect. Lead the way." Yang Zhengling nodded his head and said. The 2 of them responded and hurriedly walked in front of him. Regardless of whether it was the government or other forces, they naturally did not trust the 2 of them completely. Other than letting them walk in front, there were 6 experienced hunters walking behind the 2 of them to check for possible trap. Although the journey was slow, it was safe enough. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. After a thorough check, all the well-hidden traps were found. Some of the traps were so dangerous that it sent chills down one's spine just by looking at them. This kind of danger was not only effective on ordinary people. Even outer forged and inner refined cultivators would be injured if they were careless. The consequences of being hit by the traps was not something that ordinary people could bear in the upcoming battle. Is this the Ghost Head stronghold? We're finally here. In the distance, a huge mountain stronghold appeared in front of everyone. Everyone was faintly excited in their hearts. With this kind of emotion, the group of people could not help but speed up their advance. In a short while, everyone was halfway up the mountain. They were only 100 meters away from the Ghost Head stronghold's entrance. From their position, they could clearly see that there were countless figures from the Ghost Head stronghold within the stronghold. They were nervously guarding within the stronghold. Looks like the Ghost Head stronghold people are not stupid. They're all holed up in the stronghold. If they don't come out, we can only choose to attack by force. Yang Zhengling looked at the Ghost Head stronghold in the distance, and said in a deep voice, "Sir Yang, in my opinion, it's best to rush over and blast open the entrance of the Ghost Head stronghold. Let's kill them directly and be done with it." Li Yu, the stained hand, looked at the stronghold in the distance, and said with a disdainful look, "It's not difficult to break into the stronghold, but the danger level within 100 meters is indeed the highest. Even if we rush over directly, there will be casualties." General Su He frowned and said with a long spear in his hand. Although they were a military team and were not afraid of casualties, their combat strength was unparalleled when they combined their auras. However, their numbers were limited. There were only about 20 people, and they could not exert much power. Naturally, they had to be cautious. "Lu Menju, what do you think?" Yang Zhengling looked at the Scorching Sun Gang's leader, Lu Dong. "I'm just a martial artist. I don't know anything about strategy. I'll just follow Sir Yang's instructions." Lu Dong shook his head and said, "Well, Taoist Wudong, it's up to you now." Yang Zhengling nodded and was not modest. This time, he was appointed by Li Hun as the commander-in-chief of this bandit suppression operation. Even his subordinate, Deputy General Su He, and Li Yu, the stained hand, were assigned to listen to his orders. Naturally, he would not decline. "No problem." Taoist Wudong nodded. In an instant, there was a violent surge of spiritual pressure on his body. Unknowingly, a huge dark cloud appeared in the sky. Even the air became much colder. Some of the weaker ones could not help but shiver. Magic arts. Everyone's eyes were filled with awe and veneration. Magic arts could mobilize the power of heaven and earth. It was truly unfathomable. Ice rain technique fall. Taoist Wudong shouted in a low voice. Drops of water condensed into ice in an instant. Then, like sharp arrows, they sprinkled on the ground from the void. Boom, boom, boom. The ice rain fell continuously and rushed directly to the gate of the Ghost Head stronghold. On the ground, one by one, the traps were triggered and exploded. The intense sound of the mechanisms being activated and the sound of the traps being shot out from the ground caused the people in the distance to be alarmed. Good, you are indeed worthy of being Taoist Wudong. Just this magic art is enough to reduce our casualties by more than 10 people. Guard Yang Zhengling said with a hint of excitement on his face. You're welcome, Taoist Wudong said with a smile on his face. Well, next, let's go. With that, Yang Zhengling's face turned serious. His body was like a flash of lightning as he rushed directly to the Ghost Head stronghold opposite. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Yu, the stained hand, had already shot out like a spring. In terms of speed, he was even faster than Taoist Wudong. In an instant, he had crossed a distance of tens of meters. Go! The other soldiers, the military led by General Su He, and the many martial arts experts of the Scorching Sun Gang also rushed forward. Go! Qin Xiaoping and Tong Zhan were also affected. Their momentum suddenly rose and they quickly followed. Ziyue saw this and quickly pulled them back. He whispered, "Wait a minute." Su Ming, who was beside him, also said, "Let's wait for the sect leader and the others to break through the stronghold gate first. Otherwise, if we rush together, we won't even have a place to hide if an accident happens. It will be easy for accidents to happen." After all, Tong Zhan had rich experience in the Jianghu. He quickly came to his senses and slowed down his step. Yang Zhengling, the last shot is still fresh in my memory. This time, I will not let you return. Release. A deep voice suddenly rang out in the stronghold. Then, bowstrings were pulled and the sound of arrows being shot out quickly came. Oh no, it's bows and arrows. Crossbows and arrows. How could they have crossbows and arrows? Hide quickly. Several panicked voices could be heard. Bows and arrows were important military equipment controlled by the military. It was strictly forbidden for non-military forces to possess them. Once discovered, it would be a serious crime. Most people did not expect that the people of the Ghost Head stronghold would have such things. Although the power of bows and arrows was not considered strong compared to some of the military's heavy weapons, it was enough to send chills down the spines of most of the external trained martial artists. However, the flesh of the external trained martial artists could not withstand the piercing of the sharp arrows. Pung! 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 In an instant, countless arrows flew out like a rain of arrows, covering a large area in front of them. Chapter 126. Be careful! Chaotic screams rang out one after another. Occasionally, there was the sound of arrows piercing into flesh. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 people who were charging at the front were hit by arrows. However, the strength of a martial artist was also revealed at this moment. Even though the arrows were raining down, the speed of the few experts who were charging at the front did not slow down in the slightest. Defender Yang Zhengling held a long spear in one hand. The spear was like a dragon and was incomparably fast. With a sweep of the spear, the arrows that were charging at him were all swept away. Stained Hand Li Yu's body moved. His hands were like lightning as they brushed past. All the arrows that were touched by his hands lost their strength. Some of them were even slightly turned and bent by him. They charged back into the Ghost Head stronghold and pierced through the neck of a bandit. Lu Dong, Zhao Jing, and the young general named Su He were also charging at the front. They each used their own methods to block all the arrows. It could be said that it was because of these experts blocking at the front that most of the arrows did not have any effect. It also gave the people behind time to breathe. Looking at the rain of arrows that filled the sky, Qin Xiaoping and Tong Zhan's faces turned slightly pale. If it was not for Ziyue and Su Ming holding them back, they would have to face the countless arrows directly. Continue shooting. With a stern shout, the rain of arrows that filled the sky did not have any intention of stopping. It fell down once again. As the distance between them decreased, the power of the rain of arrows also became stronger. When it reached a distance of tens of meters, even the experts who were charging at the front would not be able to handle it as easily as they did at the beginning. Kill. Stained Hand Liyu's strength suddenly exploded. His speed was extremely fast. In an instant, he arrived in front of the Ghost Head Stronghold's mountain gate. He forcefully slammed the gate behind him. Boom! His inner strength surged. In addition to his incomparably powerful strength, he blasted out. The door, which was half a meter thick, trembled violently. Although it did not directly break open, it still made a cracking sound. Throw! All of a sudden, a stream of burning fish oil gushed down. Then, pieces of rolling stones followed. Each of these rolling stones weighed over 100 kilograms. They rolled down from the top of the stronghold, which was more than 10 meters high. The impact was astonishing. Again, Liyu didn't seem to notice the fish oil pouring down from the sky. His body shook and a unique force burst out from his body. Inner force protection. The mark of a third-rate master. Under the protection of their internal energy, normal attacks would not be able to hurt them at all. Boom. Immediately after, he hammered the door again. In an instant, a huge gap appeared in the door. Lu Dong stretched out his hand and rubbed the surface of a boulder. As his hands moved quickly, the boulder immediately began to spin like a small ball. Then, he suddenly let go. Boom! The rolling stone was like a cannonball, ruthlessly smashing into the mountain gate of the Ghost Head stronghold. The huge impact directly shattered the mountain gate, revealing a hole big enough for one person to pass through. Then, Yang Zhengling, Su He, Zhao Jing, and the other Inner Force Realm martial artists attacked as well. Boom! 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 Their attacks all landed on the mountain gate of the stronghold. Under the impact of the powerful force, the thick and heavy gate of the stronghold was finally shattered. Even the stone blocks, gravel, and other objects that were blocking the gate of the stronghold also flew out. Charge! Yang Zhengling shouted and took the lead to charge in. He climbed up to the top of the mountain gate. His long spear was like a dragon as he started to kill the people of the Ghost Head stronghold. Charge! At this moment, the people who were originally suppressed by the rain of arrows finally all charged forward. They used their own methods to block the sporadic arrows as they quickly charged into the stronghold. As more and more government officials, disciples of the Scorching Sun Gang, and people from various forces charged into the stronghold, the number of arrows shot out instantly decreased. The Ghost Head stronghold did not have many crossbows to begin with. After being destroyed by Ziyue's spiritual fire technique, there were even fewer crossbows. In the beginning, they could still be of some use. However, as the mountain gate was breached and countless martial artists rushed in, they naturally lost their use. Ziyue's long saber flashed and slashed away an arrow that was shot at him. Under Su Ming's lead, Qin Xiaoping, Tong Zhan, and the others quickly charged out. Soon, they charged into the stronghold. Almost immediately, they were in a stalemate with some of the Ghost Head stronghold's people. At this moment, Bai Ziyue naturally wouldn't be polite. He swung his saber continuously. As a powerful force surged, a bandit from the Ghost Head stronghold was split into two halves. Then, with a sweep of his saber, another bandit was split into two halves at the waist. Beside him, Su Ming, Tong Zhan, and Qin Xiaoping's movements were not slow either. Saber light and sword light flashed as they also fought with the bandit. These bandits had different figures. Some of them were the elites of the Ghost Head stronghold. None of them were weak. The weakest of them was at the outer forging level. However, there were also many who were subordinates that the Ghost Head stronghold had subdued after wiping out the other bandit. Some of them relied on brute force and were not very strong. In just an instant they were suppressed several times. Especially the dozens of people from the military. Under the leadership of young General Su He, they stabbed, and stabbed again. They formed a three-stage attack. Often, the bandits who rushed in front of them died without much effort. Of course, the Ghost Head stronghold did not lack masters. The third bandit chief, the diamond body Wu Yong, held a hammer with both hands and swung it fiercely. No one could stop him. The second bandit chief, the divine sword Lu Jiping, had exquisite swordsmanship. Almost every time he swung his sword, a person would fall. The Ghost Head stronghold also appeared at this moment. He was a middle-aged man in a red robe. His face was a little pale, but his eyes were extremely cruel. He held a long staff in his hand. It looked light, but it was very heavy. If it landed on a person's body, it seemed like it could easily shatter a person's skull. At the same time, there was a warrior who looked thin but held a large machete. He was not weak either. When he swung his machete, the blade light flashed, and a warrior who was at the outer forging level was directly cut in half. The Clear Wind Stronghold's head stronghold cut Meng Heshui in half with a single slash. Someone exclaimed, recognizing the person's identity. What puzzled people was that he was originally only a warrior at the peak of the inner forging level. However, from the aura on his body and the strength he displayed, he had also broken through the limit and reached the inner forging level. It seems like the rumor that the Ghost Head stronghold has a spirit pill that can help warriors at the peak of the inner forging level break through is true. Below, Tan Chaofan, Guoliang, and the others who had been stuck at the peak of the inner forging level for a long time had a bright light in their eyes. In terms of age, Meng Heshui, who had cut him in half, was older than them. He had stepped into the peak of the inner forging level 7 or 8 years ago. His chi and blood had already begun to decline, but he was still able to break through the limit and truly cultivate inner forging level. If he did not rely on external forces, what else could it be? From the continuous news of experts breaking through in the Ghost Head stronghold, coupled with some of the other parties' usual behavior, people had long guessed that the Ghost Head stronghold had a spirit pill that could help warriors at the inner forging level advance and break through. In their eyes, this moment was clear proof. With their hearts surging, they quickly abandoned their opponents and directly surrounded Meng Heshui. Even if he had broken through to the inner forging level, he had only just broken through. How much stronger could he be compared to a warrior at the peak of the inner forging level? Not to mention that they were not afraid at all if they worked together. Didn't you want to take revenge on me? I'd like to see how much ability you have. Yang Jingling's long spear flashed and directly pierced the diamond body Wu Yong's heavy hammer. The explosion of power caused the other party's body to slightly pause and fiercely retreat a few steps. At this time, Su He and Stained Hand Li Yu cooperated well and directly blocked the Ghost Head stronghold's second head stronghold's divine sword Lu Jiping. The Scorching Sun Gang's clan leader Lu Dong, left protector Zhao Jing, and the 5 channel chiefs directly faced the Ghost Head stronghold's stronghold. The chi that originated from the battle between inner forging level experts had a strong suppressive force when it exploded. Any warrior who had not reached the inner forging level would be forced to retreat when they saw it. They did not dare to step within 10 meters of them. Spirit energy plus 37. Spirit energy plus 96. Spirit energy plus 268. Feeling the rapid increase of his spirit energy in a short period of time, Ziyue felt a sense of comfort in his heart. In such a chaotic battlefield, even if he stood there without moving, as long as someone within a certain radius of him died, it would naturally increase the amount of spiritual energy in his body. Relaxation, excitement, all kinds of emotions surged. There are a total of 300 to 400 bandits. It won't be long before my spirit energy reaches 30,000 again. Ziyue thought to himself as he casually killed another Ghost Head stronghold bandit. He even had the time to leisurely observe the surrounding battlefield. All of a sudden, his gaze focused. He noticed that in the distant battlefield, Taoist Wudong was casting a spell. An astonishing chill condensed, and a long and narrow ice, like a huge sharp arrow, suddenly appeared in front of him. It was the ice arrow spell. Ziyue, who had always been wary of Taoist Wudong, immediately felt his heart in his throat. Suddenly, the sharp arrow shot out like a bolt of lightning and directly rushed in front of a Ghost Head stronghold chief. The chief's expression did not change. He swept his long staff, and an incomparably strong force surged into it, directly hitting the ice arrow. Puff! The ice arrow shattered, but his body involuntarily paused for a moment. Good chance. Lu Dong's eyes lit up. His hands moved like a lotus flower on his weapon, Piercer. Piercer immediately exploded with a bright light, and with a surge of force, he fiercely shot it out. Puff! The sharp spike ruthlessly pierced into the Ghost Head stronghold chief's shoulder. However, the chief's body seemed to be unbelievably tough. Even after being pierced by Lu Dong with such force, more than half of the piercer was exposed. Most importantly, after being pierced by such a strong force, not a single drop of blood flowed out of the chief's body. Chapter 127. Lu Dong's expression changed. He instantly kicked out with one leg and viciously kicked the bandit chief's stomach. His body also shot out explosively. What kind of cultivation technique is this? Zhao Jing's expression also changed. Who cares what kind of cultivation technique it is? Just kill it. Although Lu Dong was also surprised, through the short exchange of blows, he judged that the bandit chief's strength was not as strong as he had imagined. He should also be a third-rate expert, at most slightly stronger than him. With Zhao Jing assisting from the side and channel leader Wu's attack, he felt much more at ease. Before this, Ziyue's warning had flashed through his mind. However, at this moment, when he saw channel leader Wu continuously casting spells and landing them on the bandit chief's body, the doubts in his heart were all gone. He no longer held back when he attacked. His body movement, speed, strength, moves. At this moment, all of them were raised to a new level. In addition to the cooperation between Zhao Jing and channel leader Wu, they actually suppressed the bandit chief in a short period of time. In the distance, Ziyue's face revealed a trace of doubt. Could it be that his guess was wrong? Was there really no problem with channel leader Wu? However, he had seen and experienced with his own eyes that the bandit chief's disciple had helped the Ghost Head stronghold purchase military equipment. Previously, when they attacked the stronghold, they even enjoyed the attack of the military equipment. That's right, in the Ghost Head stronghold, is there another bandit chief's martial uncle? Who is his martial uncle? Is it the bandit chief or? Ziyue quickly thought in his mind. There was no doubt that the bandit chief's martial uncle was a cultivator of the immortal method. However, looking at the many Ghost Head stronghold people fighting in the field, none of them showed the skills of a cultivator of the immortal method. However, there was one thing that Ziyue was certain of. There was definitely a problem with channel leader Wu. Mount Ziyue, what are you thinking about? With a stern shout, Tong Zhan turned his saber and blocked a bandit from the Ghost Head stronghold who was charging towards Ziyue. It's nothing, Ziyue responded. He knew that there was no point in overthinking it. His figure flashed, and the saber light flashed. He joined forces with Tong Zhan to kill this bandit who had reached the level of external forging of muscles and bones. Dong! With a loud bang, a wolf-tooth club ruthlessly smashed onto Su Ming's long blade. A powerful force gushed out, along with the power of vibration, directly pouring in, causing Su Ming's expression to change. His internal organs had suffered a shock. This was a bandit with a sturdy body that far exceeded that of an ordinary person. He held a huge mace in his hand, and his strength was terrifyingly strong. Most importantly, every time he swung the mace, there would be a hidden force that would rush out like a tide, wreaking havoc and destroying his opponent's internal organs. Heart-piercing hammer technique. Ziyue, who was standing in the distance, had a glint in his eyes. He quickly recognized this hammering technique. Compared to the Iron Lady's technique, this bandit's chi and blood were thicker. He was a true martial artist who had refined his 5 internal organs. Naturally, his strength was stronger and his force was more terrifying. The power of his strike was also more tyrannical. Dong! Another wolf-tooth club fell. Even though Su Ming used his saber to block it, he could not withstand the surging force in his body. He instantly spat out a mouthful of blood. Die! The sturdy bandit glared, and his aura was astonishing. The third hammer fell instantly. Not good! Su Ming took a deep breath and wanted to retreat. However, when the force flowed to his heart and lungs, the pain of his damaged internal organs immediately caused his chi and blood to disperse. His force was also weakened by more than half. Even if he wanted to retreat, it was too late. While he was in despair, he suddenly saw a saber light shoot over from afar like a bolt of lightning. That burly bandit was alert and hurriedly dodged. He saw that the long saber was like a sharp arrow, piercing deeply into a wall and piercing through it. From his position, he could even see that the saber had pierced deeply into a wooden stake on the other side of the wall. Zhang Xian turned around, only to see a figure rushing toward him empty-handed. "You're courting death." The sturdy bandit laughed sinisterly. He turned his wolf-tooth club and struck down directly. Humph! Ziyue's expression did not change. At this moment, his hands were as white as jade. There was a sparkling light flashing over his hands. Heaven-binding hands. His hands were like flowers and the moon as they landed on the wolf-tooth club at an extreme speed. Ziyue had long known that the heart-piercing hammer technique was a rare martial technique. In particular, the method of transmitting force through one's heart was quite mysterious. Naturally, he had studied it in his spare time. Now, although he had not mastered the heart-piercing hammer technique, in fact, he had not practiced it at all. However, he had some understanding of the method of transmitting force. He was also relatively familiar with the moves of the heart-piercing hammer technique. In addition, although the wolf-tooth club had a terrifying force, it was not a sharp weapon, therefore, Ziyue dared to use his hands to receive the attack. The terrifying force surged in, but it was dissolved by Ziyue's hands. The heart-piercing force, which could break through one's internal organs, was weakened by him layer by layer until only one layer was left. With a muffled groan, Ziyue's expression did not change at all. Instead, his body moved closer. A flawless white hand passed over the wolf-tooth club and gently patted on the sturdy bandit's chest. Boom! His strength surged violently, and only at this moment did he suddenly burst out. Crack! The sturdy bandit's chest suddenly caved in. The surging force was like a sharp thorn, smashing his skin and flesh, which had been trained to be incomparably tough, into minced meat. The bandit's body flew backwards at this moment. The heaven-binding hand was not just a binding martial technique. In fact, it was a terrifying palm technique. All the force he had exerted before was for this final attack. The perfect level of the heaven-coiling hand allowed by Ziyue's usage of this martial skill to reach the pinnacle. It had even far surpassed the level of his master, Lu Dong. Even though his strength was still inferior, it was more natural and transparent when the force surged. The might that could be unleashed with the same amount of strength would naturally be more powerful. Dong! The heavy mace fell to the ground, and a large mouthful of blood spurted out from the bandit's mouth. Heaven-binding hand! Su Ming's eyes lit up, but a trace of shock flashed in his heart. He recognized Ziyue's technique. It was the famous technique of the gang's inner sect master, Lu Dong. However, Ziyue's technique was a little too powerful in his eyes. If Yangming was not mistaken, Bai Ziyue was only at the outer forging level, whereas this bandit was at the inner refining level. His strength was higher than Ouyangming's. However, even with such strength, he was still easily sent flying by Ziyue. Could it be that Ziyue's strength had already surpassed his? Su Ming felt an inexplicable complicated feeling. Ziyue's speed of growth had far exceeded his expectations. Of course, his actions were not slow either. The moment the bandit was sent flying, he turned his feet and instantly caught up with him. The moment the bandit fell, he ruthlessly stabbed with his saber. Blood spurted out. The bandit grunted. His body trembled slightly, and then he completely stopped moving. "Uncle Ming, are you all right?" Ziyue looked at Su Ming. The blood stain at the corner of his mouth was quite obvious. "I'm fine. It doesn't affect my movements." Su Ming shook his head as he spoke. Ziyue nodded and did not ask any more questions. An injury to the heart and lungs would at most affect one's strength. It should not affect one's movements. Immediately after, he turned his gaze. He immediately discovered that the ground was littered with corpses. Other than the battles between inner forging level experts, there were very few sporadic battles. Only in the depths of the stronghold could he occasionally hear the sounds of battle. In the battle between inner forging level experts, the situation gradually became clear. A total of 5 outer forging level experts surrounded the Clear Wind stronghold chief. Even though his strength had reached the inner forging level, he had just broken through. His aura was still unstable, and he was at an absolute disadvantage. There were countless saber and sword wounds, and he was in imminent danger. On the other side, Yang Jingling's strength was already stronger than the 3rd stronghold chief of the Ghost Head stronghold. With the help of the Yang family guards who were at the peak of inner forging level, he quickly stabbed his spear into the neck of the diamond god Wu Yong, killing him. On the other hand, the battle between the two sides was in a stalemate. The magical sword Lu Jiping's strength was naturally far from being a match for stained hand Li Yu and young General Su He. However, his movements were exquisite and his swordsmanship was nimble. He was always able to avoid a fatal blow by a hair's breadth. As a result, he did not suffer any serious injuries. However, anyone could see that as time passed, his defeat and death were inevitable. And the opportunity had arrived. After Yang Zhengling killed the 3rd stronghold chief, Wu Yong, he did not hesitate and immediately stabbed his spear at Lu Jiping. His speed was extremely fast. Chance! At this moment, the divine sword Li Yu's eyes lit up. He pressed his hands together, and in an instant, it was as if countless hands were streaking through the air, quickly reaching for the divine sword Lu Jiping. Su He, who was standing at the side, did not say anything unnecessary. The long spear in his hand spun and stabbed out silently. A strong sense of danger made Lu Jiping's heart feel extremely alert. Finally, he could not hold it in any longer and let out a fierce roar. "Senior brother!" This senior brother was like a signal. In an instant, he suddenly let go of the sword in his hand. However, the long sword did not fall as expected. Instead, it paused for a moment and then started to vibrate violently. A strong wave of mind power that was far stronger than that of an ordinary warrior surged out from Lu Jiping's body. Whoosh! The long sword suddenly turned and followed an inexplicable trajectory, directly slashing towards the divine sword Li Yu's exquisite hands. Mind power sword manipulation. Are you an immortal master? Before Li Yu could say anything, Yang Zhengling, who was rushing over, exclaimed in shock. He had interacted with the other party for some time, but he did not realize that the other party was actually a cultivator of the immortal way. What a divine sword! Indeed, there are only wrong names but never wrong nicknames. As Li Yu the stained hand spoke, his body suddenly stopped. Then, he pulled back his feet and his body flashed. He actually retreated at an even faster speed than when he was approaching. Chapter 128. However, the sword seemed to have the ability to track him, and it followed him like a shadow. As a last resort, Li Yu's inner strength surged in an instant, and a special force spread across the surface of his body. Inner strength protection. Boom. With a slight slash, the long sword easily pierced through Li Yu's inner strength protection, and directly cut into his shoulder, leaving a deep wound. On the other side, the more they fought, the stranger Lu Dong's expression became. He had an ominous premonition in his heart. He realized that although the head chieftain's movements and mannerisms were no different from an ordinary person's, his condition seemed to be very different from a human's. After fighting for a long time, his weapon had landed on his opponent's body no less than 10 times, and some places could even be considered as vital points. However, his opponent did not seem to be affected at all. He did not feel pain at all, and his combat strength did not weaken much. What made his heart sink the most was that no matter where his attack landed on his opponent's body, not a single drop of blood flowed out. He's not human. Lu Dong was horrified. How could he not know that the person he was fighting was not the head chieftain of the Ghost Head Chieftain, but a corpse? A zombie? Just as he was hesitating, he suddenly heard the remarkable swordsman Lu Zhiping's shout from afar, and he immediately became alert. The zombie he was fighting could not be his senior brother, so who could Lu Zhiping's senior brother be? Lu Dong's expression changed, and he quickly retreated. At this moment, Ziyue's warning naturally appeared in his mind. However, he only realized it now, but it was still too late. Just as he was about to move, a small, watery sword shot toward him like a bolt of lightning. It was at this moment that Taoist Wudong finally revealed his fangs. His first move was extremely vicious and vicious. "Master, be careful." In the distance, Ziyue let out a shout. Inner strength protection. Lu Dong was indeed one of the rare third-rate masters in Qinghe town. He reacted instantly and hurriedly activated his inner strength. Moreover, even though it was too late for him to dodge, he still adjusted his body in an instant. His body did not move, but his chest suddenly shrank. His flesh and blood were crushed, and he became shorter. Poof! There was a tremor. The small sword easily tore through Lu Dong's internal energy protection, and then directly pierced through his chest, completely piercing through. Humph! He let out a muffled groan. Thanks to his timely reaction, he was able to avoid certain death from the surprise attack of the magic tool this time. The place where the small sword had pierced through was only half an inch away from his heart. Half an inch was the difference between life and death. Even Ziyue, in the distance, breathed a sigh of relief. However, Taoist Wudong's attack to kill him. Roar! Lu Dong didn't even have time to catch his breath before the originally silent refined corpse suddenly let out a loud roar. Its originally pale white appearance instantly turned into a copper color. Bronze-armored corpse. This was a bronze-armored corpse that was far superior to the iron corpse that Ziyue killed in terms of physical strength and strength. It was not until then that it revealed its true form under the control of Taoist Wudong. The bronze-armored corpse slightly crushed the ground. Under the powerful force, the ground collapsed slightly. Then, like an agile ape, it pounced directly in front of Lu Dong with a strong gust of wind. An iron rod smashed down at an incomparably fast speed. At the same time, Taoist Wudong in the distance waved his hand slightly again. The small sword turned into a stream of light again and pierced forward. Taoist Wudong's attack was extremely fast. One move after another, and he did not give Lu Dong any time to catch his breath. Lu Dong, who was already injured, could not dodge this pincer attack. Taoist Wudong! Lu Dong clenched his teeth and let out a stern cry. Faced with this situation of certain death, he also displayed his ruthlessness. Even if he died, he would tear off a layer of his opponent's skin. The remaining spiritual power in his body surged and was channeled into the piercer in his hand. As for his hands, they turned into a blur as he rapidly fiddled with them. Without thinking, he actually gained some sort of enlightenment in his heart. It was as if all the troubles and doubts he had about the heaven-binding technique had disappeared at this moment. He had obtained an answer. The parts that had been stagnant when he used it also dissipated in an instant. There were no obstructions and it was smooth and smooth. Perfection. Lu Dong's face was filled with joy. He knew in his heart that in this life and death situation, his potential had erupted, and he had directly cultivated the heaven-binding hands to the perfection stage. In an instant, his understanding and application of the heaven-binding technique had risen to another level. As he fiddled, his strength was more restrained, but the power that was channeled into the piercer was even more terrifying. Unfortunately, it's too late. He sighed softly. If he had cultivated the heaven-binding technique to perfection before the extermination of the bandits, he would not have ended up like this. In the end, Lu Dong's hands relaxed and stretched out at the same time. Then, he gently pushed the piercers back. Boom! With a loud explosion, the piercer immediately turned into a swift flowing light and shot out. After doing all this, Lu Dong's face finally calmed down. Without hesitation, he closed his eyes and faced death calmly. Poof! Lu Dong's head was directly smashed by the iron rod. At the same time, Taoist Wudong's Dharma artifact dagger pierced Lu Dong's back like a bolt of lightning and directly pierced through his heart. In an instant, Lu Dong was dead. Master! Ziue's heart trembled. He could not believe his eyes. His master was dead? Leader! The other disciples of the Scorching Sun gang also exclaimed in disbelief. For the first time, they thought of retreating. Left Guardian Zhao Jing, who was in the middle of the battlefield, fled the moment Lu Dong was attacked. Taoist Wudong was the head chieftain of the Ghost Head stronghold? Zhao Jing was extremely shocked and lost the courage to fight. Even his leader, who was far more powerful than him, was killed in an instant. He did not think that he would be of any use if he continued to stay. Although Lu Dong was dead, the piercer he shot out at the last moment pierced the copper-armored corpse's head in an instant. Poof! Without any resistance, the piercer pierced through the zombie's head and went deep into its skull. Bam! The copper-armored corpse's hard and heavy body fell heavily to the ground. It was dead. Zombies had strong bodies, but their heads were also their weak point. After being pierced by Lu Dong's piercer, it was naturally dead. Lu Dong. Channel leader Wu Dao's smug face was instantly filled with endless anger. The copper-armored corpse was dead. The copper-armored corpse that he had painstakingly spent over 20 years to refine, and he had spent countless resources to do so. But now it was dead? At this moment, he was filled with endless arrogance. Channel leader Wu Dao, if I'm not wrong, you should be the real chief of the Ghost Head stronghold. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have found it hard to believe. A voice could be heard all of a sudden. Faced with the powerful second chief and chief of the Ghost Head stronghold who had suddenly revealed their thunderous methods, the young general named Su He's expression remained calm. He said, I originally thought that I wouldn't have to use these things, but now it seems that Lord Li's foresight is godly. As he spoke, he quickly fished out a ring-like object from his bosom. The inner strength in his body was rapidly depleted like water. At this moment, the ring-like object in his hand emitted an extremely clear light. This is? Oh no. Lu Zhiping's expression changed drastically. Without thinking, he immediately fled in the direction of channel leader Wu Dao. Spirit restriction ring-like. Channel leader Wu Dao's expression also turned extremely ugly in an instant. The spirit restriction ring-like was a secret military weapon that was specially made to deal with people who cultivated immortal method. Once it was used, the spiritual energy of people who cultivated immortal methods within a certain range would be restricted. Because of the restriction of spiritual energy, it would be difficult for Dharma weapons, spells, and other means to be effective. It was already considered good if they could use up to 30% of their strength. It was also considered an important weapon of the military. He did not expect that this young General Su he would carry one with him. You still want to escape after injuring me? The moment Lu Zhiping turned to flee, the voice of Li Yu, whose shoulder was heavily injured, suddenly lowered. Then, he moved his feet and quickly flew past. Almost in an instant, he rushed in front of Lu Zhiping. A slightly rough hand slowly reached out. At the same time, the long spear in Yang Zhengling's hand moved quickly. In an instant, it blocked Lu Zhiping's path. "Senior brother, save me!" Lu Zhiping roared. He would rather rush toward Yang Zhengling's long spear than touch Li Yu's hand. This was because he knew very well that in the face of Yang Zhengling's long spear, he would at most be stabbed. However, once he was touched by Li Yu's hand, his body would no longer be under his control. His life and death would also be controlled by the other party. "You can't escape," Li Yu snorted. His speed, which was already extremely fast, increased by a large margin. He grabbed Lu Zhiping's arm with all his might. Immediately afterward, a series of phantoms flashed past his body. Lu Zhiping only felt that he was like a small boat that had encountered stormy waves on the sea. He had the ability to control the boat, but he couldn't control the direction at all. Then, he felt that his neck was tightened, and an endless force of oppression kept pouring in. "Master!" He opened his mouth, only to hear a crack. His neck was broken. Casually throwing away Lu Zhiping's body, Li Yu's body moved again. Like lightning, he directly rushed toward Chief Wu. The Ghost Head Stronghold Chief was their true target. Chapter 129. Humph! Elder Wudong snorted coldly and waved his hand, causing the trembling sword to fly backward. Since his junior brother had asked for help, he naturally did what he could. However, the spirit-restricting hoop had a certain effect on his Dharma artifact. In the end, he was a step too late and failed to save his junior brother. However, in the face of Li Yu, who was rushing towards him, his face did not change in the slightest. He reached into his bosom and took out a cloth banner. The soul-amassing banner. It was different from the soul-amassing banner that Ziyue had obtained from Zhang Yuchang. The soul-amassing banner in Elder Wudong's hand was not only made of better materials, but it also contained a more terrifying Yin energy. The soul-amassing banner trembled slightly, causing the surrounding temperature to drop significantly. Under the shroud of Yin Qi, countless Yin souls appeared. Even Li Yu could not help but pause in the face of the countless Yin souls. He was naturally not afraid of a single Yin soul, but he did not dare to underestimate a large number of Yin souls gathered together. However, Elder Wudong's expression quickly changed. He waved his hand and the countless Yin souls that had appeared quickly retreated. "You are indeed a disciple of the Corpse Ghost sect. However, it is too late for you to recall them now." Su He's expression did not change. A large and sturdy talisman with a shocking spiritual pressure had appeared in his hand. The material of this talisman was not the 100 stacks of paper that Ziyue had used to draw talismans. Instead, it was a special kind of animal skin. The animal skin itself had a shocking spiritual nature, far surpassing that of the 100 stacks of paper. Naturally, it could contain a greater amount of power. Obviously, this talisman was not simple. Su He did not do anything, but the talisman instantly shot out. In the void, a shocking aura immediately brewed. The surging power of thunder and lightning was like the roar of an angry dragon. The oppressive aura caused everyone's hearts to tremble. Righteous 5 Thunder Talisman. Boom! Countless lightning bolts instantly intertwined and struck down. In an instant, countless Yin souls and ghosts were scattered amidst the cries of ghosts. No matter how strong the Yin spirit was, under the effect of the lightning, it was completely useless. Taoist Wudong's expression changed when he saw that the lightning seemed to be tracking him. His spirit force surged and the soul-gathering flag in his hand flew up. Endless energy spread out and covered an area of dozens of meters. A pained expression flashed across his face. Taoist Wudong took advantage of this opportunity to flee toward the entrance of the stronghold. Wu Daozhang's speed was extremely astonishing. In the blink of an eye, he had already traversed dozens of meters. However, very soon his figure came to a halt. He actually turned back in an instant and directly flew towards Bai Ziyue, who was at the side. Spell, Spirit, Eye Technique. Under the shroud of Yin Qi, no one could see anything. Ziyue couldn't help but feel a strong sense of unease. He quickly cast the Spirit Eye spell. In the blink of an eye, everything in the surroundings was in his eyes. At the same time, he saw Channel Master Wu Dao rushing towards him at high speed. His opponent's eyes were cold and filled with endless murderous intent. From afar, there was an aura that seemed to have locked onto him. Oh no! Ziyue's heart skipped a beat, and his expression changed. He immediately retreated. Die! A sparkling small sword turned into a stream of light and shot directly towards Ziyue. Ziyue's body shook, and a layer of transparent light film instantly condensed. Then, he felt that it was not safe, so he quickly pulled out the scroll and tapped lightly. In the blink of an eye, a swordsman appeared directly in front of Ziyue. As soon as the swordsman appeared, his figure flashed and his whole body turned into a sharp sword, slashing down. Bang! The small sword trembled, but the light flashed again and turned into a stream of light, directly entering the swordsman's body. Puff! The swordsman's body paused, and the spiritual light suddenly dissipated. The sparkling small sword did not stop and shot out again. But at this time, Ziyue had already tapped lightly on the scroll, and two eagle directly blocked in front of Ziyue. The small sword pierced through the two eagle, and the moment the eagle dissipated, it was nailed to the divine light shield. The divine light shield trembled slightly and blocked it. He let out a long sigh of relief in his heart. In the blink of an eye, he raised his head and saw that Wu Daozhang was already very close to him. He said in a cold voice, "You really killed Yu Cheng, he knew?" Ziyue's body shook, but his mouth was tightly pursed, and he continued to retreat. Boom! An ice arrow shot out and hit Ziyue's divine light shield. The divine light shield trembled, and with a crack it finally shattered. But at the same time, the ice arrow also shattered and lost its power. Dong! Feeling a wooden wall on his back, Bai Ziyue leaped up and channeled his force into his body. Bang! The wooden wall shattered, and his body broke through the wall. Wu Daozhang, who was about to continue chasing, suddenly trembled. He groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. The soul-amassing banner was a magic tool connected to his mind. At this moment, it finally could not withstand the continuous bombardment of thunder and lightning, and was shattered. Naturally, he did not feel good. "I'll spare your life for now." With a groan, Wu Daozhang knew that he had lost the opportunity to attack again. He looked at Ziyue unwillingly, but in the end, he did not continue to chase. His body turned again, and he rushed out of the gate of the stronghold. Boom! 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 Thunder and lightning continued to strike. The soul-amassing banner's body was shattered, and the Yin soul in it was naturally annihilated. Without any support, the Yin Qi that had been shrouding the area gradually dissipated. Heaven and earth returned to normal. Everyone looked at the messy scene with awe. Thunder technique. This was the power of the thunder technique. Even though it was only a lightning talisman, its power was still terrifyingly strong. In the end, we still let him escape, Liu said unwillingly. This time, their preparations could not be said to be insufficient. However, no one could have expected that the real chief of the Ghost Head stronghold was Wu Daozhang, who had been by their side all this time. It's okay. No matter what, the Ghost Head stronghold has been destroyed, and Wu Daozhang is now a rootless duckweed. He won't be much of a threat. Young General Su, he waved his hand and said as if he did not care. When Yang Zhengling saw this, he opened his mouth and smiled bitterly. Liu was a third-rate master, and although Su He's strength was inferior, he had many tricks up his sleeve. His identity was obviously not ordinary, and naturally, he was not afraid of Wu Daozhong. However, he was the guardian of Qinghe town. Once Wu Daozhong wreaked havoc, he would not be able to stop him. Sir Yang, you don't have to worry. Wu Daozhong is obviously the disciple of the corpse ghost sect. Now that his refined corpse is dead, and the soul-gathering banner used to control ghosts is broken, his 10th level strength has been reduced by 80%. He won't be much of a threat. As if he saw the hesitation on Yang Zhengling's face, Su He explained with a relaxed expression. I can only hope so. Yang Zhengling nodded and suppressed the uneasiness in his heart. He immediately organized his men to thoroughly clean up and investigate the Ghost Head stronghold. Mount Ziyue, are you okay? The sky was clear, and Su Ming, Tong Zhan, and the others naturally saw Ziyue's sorry figure. They quickly went up and asked. Yes, what happened just now? Qin Xiaoping also asked with a nervous expression. They were not far from Ziyue. Although they could not see, and even their ears were a little fuzzy because of the yin qi, they could still feel that there was a shocking aura that exploded around them. Nothing. Ziyue shook his head with a complicated expression. He ignored them and quickly walked in the direction of his master. 3 days later, in Ziyue's courtyard, there was a knock on the door. Senior Brother Lu, what are you doing? Ziyue said and looked at Senior Brother Lu Heng in surprise. By Shitty, I'm here to say goodbye to you. Lu Heng said with a calm expression. I came with the sect leader. Now that the sect leader is gone, I naturally have to go back to my hometown. Did they say something? Ziyue frowned and asked. He knew that his master had descendants, but they were all in Wujiang County. This time, since his master had died, they naturally had to come over. However, his master's 2 sons were extremely repulsed by him and Lu Heng. They were not even allowed to interfere with the funeral. Therefore, he had to leave after burning an incense stick at the funeral. Haha, I'm just an outsider. Lu Heng shook his head and said, Let's not talk about this. I planned to leave today. I originally wanted to leave like this, but after thinking about it, I decided to give this to you. As he spoke, Lu Heng handed a wooden box to Ziyue. What's this? Ziyue asked in confusion. The Emerald Cloud Pill. Lu Heng said softly. The Emerald Cloud Pill? Why is it in your hands? Ziyue stared at him. He naturally knew that this was the item that his master had agreed to exchange with Elder Nie Yunhao for the Snake Demon. It could help martial artists above the inner Qi realm to improve their strength. Even Elder Nie, who was at the peak of the third-rate master, wanted to use it to improve and become a second-rate master. Logically speaking, this item should not have fallen into Lu Heng's hands even if the sect leader had died. The sect leader received this item the day before he went to exterminate the bandit. I'm the only one who knows where it was placed. This time, his 2 sons carelessly held the sect leader's funeral and instead made a big fuss over the gold and silver. I thought that it would be better to give it to you than to leave it to them, so I took it out. Lu Heng said directly. Hearing this, Ziyue was silent. He naturally knew why the sect leader's 2 sons were repulsed by him. It was naturally because of the treasures left behind by his master. The items in his personal treasury were not worth tens of thousands of gold, but they were definitely a huge fortune. Anyone who saw them would be tempted. It was just that some people did not dare to covet them because of the sect's rules. But after all, that was his master's family matter. Even if he was his disciple, he could not say much. As for the Emerald Cloud Pill, Chapter 130. Just accept this Emerald Sky Pill. I'm not like you, who has outstanding talent in martial arts. Even if it's useless now, It'll definitely be useful in the future. As for me, I don't have any talent in martial arts. It'll be a waste to keep it, Lu Hing said slowly. Then I'll accept it. Ziyue's expression turned solemn as he reached out to take it. If there's anything in the future, just tell me. I'll do my best to complete it. This could be considered a promise from him, which meant that he owed Lu Hing a favor. Lu Hing smiled and didn't say anything else. His thoughts were simple. He gave Ziyue the pill because he really didn't need it and didn't want to leave it to the two sons of the sect master. He didn't care much about the so-called favor. After sending senior brother Lu Hing off, Ziyue's expression was somewhat calm. He naturally didn't have any thoughts of returning it to the two sons of the sect master. Their cold attitude also made him unhappy. He opened the wooden box and two thumb-sized sparkling pills appeared in front of him. The Emerald Sky pill can help martial artists who have cultivated inner strength increase their cultivation. Its effects are extraordinary. For the current me, it's not suitable for me. Ziyue put away the wooden box again. He was still very far away from being able to cultivate inner force. However, I do need to improve my strength as soon as possible. Not to mention the sect master 5 outside. Now that he knows that I killed his disciple, he'll definitely attack me if he encounters me. Even within the sect, it's not that peaceful right now. Ziyue's gaze couldn't help but become deep and serene. During these 3 days, he spent most of his time dealing with his master's funeral. Even though he was ostracized by his master's two sons, he would still do what he could. Therefore, he didn't know much about the internal affairs of the sect. However, even this little bit made him feel uneasy. There were many people in the sect who flattered the powerful and trampled on the weak. Ziyue could already clearly feel the difference in treatment. This wasn't a big deal, and he didn't care about it. However, the position of the sect master of the inner sect was still vacant, which obviously caused some people's thoughts to waver. Especially Left Guardian Zhao Jing. During this period of time, he had been very active and had started to move in many ways. Even on the day of his master's funeral, there was no trace of him. It was said that he had already gone to Wujiang County to seek support. Regarding this, he naturally had his own plans. In the first place, these matters had nothing to do with him. His identity as the former sect leader's disciple had no effect on who the sect leader belonged to. However, as Left Protector Zhao Jing returned from Wujiang County, some small tricks against him began to increase, which made him feel a little annoyed. It's only about 20 days. If it's just these little tricks, I'll bear with it for the time being. If it's too much, I won't let it go so easily. Ziyue thought to himself as he looked at the soul converging banner in his arms. He had already planned to head to Wujiang County at the end of this month. If he counted carefully, it would only take him about 20 days. During this period of time, he did not want to cause any trouble. However, if the other party really went overboard, he might not be able to do anything to someone like the Left Protector. However, if it was just an ordinary inner sect disciple or even a steward, he had plenty of methods to instill fear in them. Then, Ziyue did not think too much about it and once again immersed himself in cultivation. Ever since he had obtained the Vajra glazed body, he had been diligently practicing it, hoping that he could reach the entry level as soon as possible. Perhaps it was his nature, or perhaps it was because of the different environment, but the sense of crisis from his lack of strength had always shrouded him, and he did not dare to relax in the slightest. It should be soon. After these few days of cultivation, I've always felt that my heart has been beating more violently, and the supply of qi and blood has been really strengthened. It shouldn't be long before I reach the entry level of the Vajra glazed body. Ziyue felt the situation in his body. Compared to when he was in the external forging, his qi and blood were also better, and he was secretly delighted. Apart from practicing the cultivation method, Ziyue would spend time secretly pondering the way to operate the force. This was because he knew that the true strength of an internal cultivator was actually the transmission of force, which was completely different from external forging. An external cultivator's force surged and directly acted on the surface of the attack. On the other hand, an internal cultivator's force could pass through weapons and directly penetrate the opponent's internal organs, and attack the opponent's internal organs and other weak points. This was also the reason why an internal cultivator could easily defeat an external cultivator. Perhaps an external cultivator's talent was extraordinary, and his strength was not weaker than a new internal cultivator's. However, the internal organs of an external cultivator had not been tempered. Once the force penetrated, the internal organs would be shattered, and it would naturally cause fatal damage to them. Internal cultivators could really be said to be able to kill people without leaving a trace. Ziyue's force was circulating as one, and he pondered over the method of transmitting force through space. Although he was a little shaky at first, it was not too difficult. One of the reasons was that the internal cultivation method itself had an introduction to this aspect, and the other was naturally the heart-piercing hammer technique that Ziyue had obtained. The main point of the technique was to transmit force through space, and it was a special method of operating force that directly hit the heart and lungs. Ziyue only had to ponder over it carefully, and he already had some gains. He specifically found some green bricks, and then placed a piece of tofu on the green brick. The force in his body surged and continuously flowed into his arm. Ziyue punched out and directly touched the surface of the tofu. Puff! With a tremor, the tofu shook slightly, and a small piece broke slightly. However, the green bricks under the tofu were densely packed, and countless cracks appeared. The penetrating force is still a little lacking. Only when the force is released, and the tofu above is not damaged at all, but the green bricks below are shattered into pieces, can I be considered to have completely mastered the penetrating force. Ziyue thought silently, and he felt a little satisfied in his heart. One had to know that when he had just started cultivating, the tofu would directly shatter and splatter in all directions with a punch. Now it was only a small piece of broken tofu. With such a degree of control over the penetrating force, in fact, he had already surpassed many internal cultivators who had refined their internal organs, and even their internal organs. It was already 2 hours later when he finished cultivating. Ziyue looked at a large piece of meat that had been boiled in the pot, and he put it in front of the puppy. This meat was the meat of a snake demon, and it contained amazing spirituality. It was very effective for external and internal cultivators, and its freshness seemed to be very high. It had been more than 10 days since the snake meat was hunted, but there was not the slightest stench. Ziyue did not eat it himself, and he threw it all to the puppy. After a period of time, he could clearly feel that the puppy had become much fatter. Its broken leg had already healed, and it was running around the courtyard, full of energy. The only thing that was not different was probably its stupid characteristic. A butterfly that occasionally flew over could make it play with it for an entire afternoon, and it looked like it would not stop until it caught it. However, when the butterfly flew out of the courtyard, it did not dare to take a step out even though the door was clearly open. Its range of activity seemed to always be limited to the courtyard and the room. As for other changes, perhaps there were also, but they were not obvious. Ziyue did not have much experience to observe them for the time being. After having lunch in a nearby restaurant, Ziyue was about to go home when he saw 2 disciples coming directly to him. They said, "By Shidi, there is a defection in the sect. The Internal Affairs Hall has assigned the task to you. You may need to make a trip." Defection has always been a matter of the Law Enforcement Hall. When was it my turn to take care of it? Ziyue raised his eyes and asked disapprovingly. He naturally knew that this was the work of the left guardian, Zhao Jing. They were even directly under Zhao Jing's hint to use some small tricks against him. Generally speaking, it is naturally a matter of the law enforcement hall. However, the sect has been busy recently, and the law enforcement hall does not have so many people, so the disciple was a little hesitant. Xiu's future potential was extraordinary. If it was not necessary, he did not want to offend him. However, he did not dare to disobey the orders of the higher-ups. So, you're blaming me for this? Do you think that I, Xiu, am easy to bully? Xiu said with a cold smile. By shitty, don't make things difficult for us. We are just following orders. Moreover, there is a rule in the sect that disciples must complete a task every month. If it is an emergency, it can be carried out through a delegation. Bai Shidi has not accepted a task this month. Even if we make a fuss, it will probably not work. The other disciple persuaded with a wry smile. The so-called task can be removed as long as you hand in 100 contribution points. You don't need to use the rules to pressure me. However, what is the situation? Tell me first, and I will decide whether to accept it or not. Xiu said in a relaxed tone as he patted the dust off his body. A showdown task could scare some of the outer or inner disciples who had just become official disciples. It was not much of a threat to him. However, since the two of them were begging him, he did not want to be too forceful. Therefore, he decided to listen. If it was simple, he did not mind taking a trip. However, if it was strange, he naturally would not take the risk. It is like this. Outer disciple Zhang Gui killed Old Crow Gong Xiua of the Jade Moon Flower Ship and Lu Qing of the Flower Ship on the night 3 days ago. Then, when the city gate opened the next day, he escaped directly. The task is to be able to track him back, dead or alive. The disciple hurriedly handed over the task and said, Zhang Gui? Xiu's expression changed slightly. He naturally knew who Zhang Gui was. This Zhang Gui was not only from the same village as him, but also joined the Scorching Sun Gang at the same time as him. However, due to different circumstances, they gradually grew apart. He did not expect that this task would be related to him. Since it happened 3 days ago, wouldn't he have run far away? How can we still catch him? Bai Xiu said with a straight face. I just received news that someone saw him return to his hometown Cloud Leaf Village yesterday. He should not have run too far. The other disciple followed up. Chapter 131. After reading the mission scroll, Xiu's expression was calm as he silently pondered. The matter was actually very simple. Zhang Gui had taken advantage of the chaos in the sect when most of the inner disciples had returned from exterminating the Ghost Head stronghold. He had suddenly attacked at night and killed Old Crow and the pimp. The specific reason was not mentioned, but the two of them were dead, and Zhang Gui had escaped. No matter what the reason was, he was sentenced to death. He had the heart to not care, but considering their friendship in the early days, if he did not care, Zhang Gui would be dead for sure once others tracked him down. Thus, he was somewhat hesitant. As for this mission assigned to him by the Internal Affairs Hall, no matter how ignorant he was, he knew that there was something fishy about it. Perhaps there was some kind of scheme waiting for him here. However, what do I have to fear? Xiu suddenly felt a sense of heroism in his heart. As long as it was not an expert above the inner strength realm, he would not be afraid even if it was someone at the level of one of the 5 great supervisors. Just the painting of the eagle swordsman was enough to give him confidence in facing someone at the peak of the inner refinement realm. In addition, he had the soul converging banner and other immortal method. Even if such an existence were to attack, it was hard to say who would live and who would die. Not to mention, if he could not beat him, he could still escape. As for the inner strength realm, he believed that Left Protector Zhao Jing would not be so shameless as to ask such an existence to attack him. As for Zhao Jing himself, it was even more impossible. Zhao Jing had been busy roping in various experts during this period of time. How could he have the time to personally appear? Moreover, Ziyue had always displayed the strength of an outer refinement realm. It should still be deceptive to a certain extent. All right, I'll accept this mission. After making up his mind, Ziyue became even more courageous. Instead of waiting for Zhao Jing to continuously use other methods, it was better to take the initiative in his own hands. Zhao Jing's little tricks had already annoyed him, so he took this opportunity to bare his fangs. Only then would he be able to make Zhao Jing fearful and let him pass through these 20 days peacefully. As soon as he finished speaking, he did not continue to pay attention to Zhao Jing and directly turned to leave. The destruction of the Ghost Head stronghold was something worth celebrating for the entire Qinghe town. At the city gate, one could clearly feel that the flow of people and the transport of goods had become more frequent and dense. Many merchants who had originally planned to travel by water had changed their plans to travel by land. They hoped to save on the high cost of transportation and the risk of encountering water bandits, while there were no bandits blocking the way. Ziyue rode on a gray horse and successfully left the city. Then, he quickly galloped into the distance. On the main road, dust was flying everywhere. Ziyue sat on his horse with a solemn expression. This was actually his first time riding a horse. The reason why he was able to ride a horse so smoothly was because of his superb control of force and the rapid coordination of the force transmitted from the horse's back. Fortunately, Dama was quite docile. Coupled with his strong adaptability, he quickly became proficient. No one would be able to tell that he was a novice. Of course, he didn't own this big horse. He had put down 100 taels of silver as a deposit and rented it from the village. It cost 1 tael of silver a day as rent, so it wasn't cheap. Giddy up! Giddy up! As Bai Ziyue whipped his horse, the surrounding scenery flashed by continuously. Very quickly, he arrived at an intersection. There was a small path that extended into the mountains. This small path was the path that led to his old home, the Cloud Leaf Village. The winding mountain path was full of potholes. Naturally, it was much harder to travel than on the official road. However, Ziyue wasn't slow on Dama's horse. At this time, there weren't many people. Instead, he was more alert than before. If the left protector had any plans, it would be more appropriate to take action here. However, along the way, he didn't encounter any attacks as he neared his old home. This made him somewhat suspicious. No matter what, I'll deal with whatever comes my way. As long as I'm strong enough, I don't have to worry about these demons and monsters. However, the stronger I am, the more confident I will be. Coincidentally, I have sufficient spiritual energy now. It's time for me to raise my strength again. On the mountain path, Ziyue galloped on his horse. However, he couldn't help but look at his status panel. Spiritual energy, 62,154 points. Looking at the amount of spiritual energy he had, Ziyue felt a sense of fullness for the first time. During the trip to the Ghost Head stronghold, his spiritual energy had increased by more than 50,000 points. This was also because some people were too far away from him when they died, so he didn't add them. Otherwise, his harvest would have been even greater. Spend 23,989 spiritual energy to raise the purple chi visualization technique to the 5th level. Raise it! Ziyue didn't hesitate and chose to raise it. In an instant, the many mysteries of the purple chi visualization technique appeared in his mind one by one. The spiritual energy in his body also increased by a large margin. My spiritual energy has reached 8,000 points, and my mental energy has also increased to 21 points. With my current spiritual energy, I can cast all kinds of spells. No matter if it's speed or strength, they're all a lot better than before. Ziyue's mind moved and an orange-red flame appeared in his hand. This flame didn't seem any different from the flames he used before. However, the energy it contained far surpassed what he used before. At least, He could feel that the temperature it contained was more than 30% higher than when he was at the 4th level of Qi Disciple. The power of a spell was directly related to the cultivator's strength and realm. The higher the level, the stronger the spiritual energy. Similarly, the spiritual energy that could be carried in the spell would naturally be more abundant. The power that could be released from the spell would naturally be stronger. If I used the spiritual light shield spell now, it would probably be much easier to block the attack of the 5 channels. It wouldn't be like before, where I had to use all kinds of methods to barely block his sword. However, at this time, I can't raise the level of the purple Qi visualization technique anymore. Ziyue thought in his heart and felt a little regretful. He knew that the purple Qi visualization technique stopped at the 5th level. Without the subsequent techniques, he naturally didn't have the chance to raise it. Without thinking about it further, Ziyue placed his gaze on the spiritual eye spell. He had finally reached the entry level of this spell after the thrilling experience in the Ghost Head stronghold. Consume 798 points of spiritual energy to raise the spiritual eye spell to small mastery. Consume 1600 points of spiritual energy to raise the spiritual eye spell to large mastery. Consume 3200 points of spiritual energy to raise the spiritual eye spell to perfection. Raise. 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 Without much hesitation, the rich Ziyue directly spent close to 5600 points of spiritual energy to raise it to perfection. Although this spiritual eye spell couldn't directly increase his combat strength, its supplementary effects were extremely good. During the Ghost Head stronghold trip, if it wasn't for the spiritual eye spell that allowed him to see things under the shroud of Yin Qi, he might have been stabbed to death by the 5 channels without making a sound. Naturally, he placed more importance on this technique. In an instant, Ziyue felt that countless cultivation experiences regarding the spiritual eye spell had appeared in his mind. The rune arrangement within was also optimized and raised. Not only was it more exquisite and nimble, but it was also much smoother when used. At the same time, Ziyue felt a piercing pain in his eyes. Then, an endless coolness continuously diffused in his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, he immediately discovered that his eyes had become incomparably bright. Everything around him seemed to have a different color in his eyes. It was even clearer. As far as the eye could see, the scene of a few kilometers away appeared in his eyes. Furthermore, Ziyue urged spiritual energy to flow directly into his eyes. He didn't need to visualize the mysteries of the runes of the spiritual eye spell at all. He was able to use the spiritual eye spell naturally. In terms of appearance, there were no changes. Even if others were to observe him, they would only feel that his eyes had become slightly brighter. They wouldn't be able to discover that he had already used a rather mysterious spell. Spell instinct. Ziyue's heart trembled. He thought of a phrase recorded on the spiritual eye spell jade slip when he had first obtained it. This was a special phenomenon that would only occur when a spell was cultivated to the extreme. There was no need to visualize runes. With a thought, one would be able to use spiritual energy. This was spell instinct. It should be known that when ordinary cultivators fought, they often liked to use magic tools. At worst, they would use talismans to fight. Very rarely they would use magic spells. Why was this so? It was because magic tools and talismans could be activated in an instant, without the slightest pause. As for spells, because of the visualization process, one would often lose the initiative in a battle that was constantly changing. For example, Ziyue and the old elementary scholar had previously hunted the locust tree spirit together. Regardless of whether the old elementary scholar used the invocation spell or the thunderfall spell, there was an extremely long pause period in between. This period of time was when he visualized the runes of the spell and continuously used the spell. In a normal battle, this period of time was enough for the enemy to kill him dozens of times. If a spell was cultivated to the point where it formed spell instinct, Then one could directly skip the process of visualizing the spell and use it with a thought. This was equivalent to using magic tools and talismans in battle. Naturally, one would be able to explode with even greater combat power. I never thought that this upgrade would allow me to cultivate the spiritual eye spell to the point where it forms spell instinct. Xiu's heart was filled with excitement. Driven by spiritual energy, he looked as far as the eye could see. Everything around him had changed once again. In the mountain forest, countless auras bloomed before his eyes. The flow of spiritual energy, the changes in the climate, and even some of the pulses in the earth were all displayed more clearly in his eyes. Moreover, under the gaze of his eyes, the chi and blood of some animals, even if they were hiding in caves or behind large trees, as long as they didn't go too deep, could be clearly seen. Suddenly, Xiu's gaze paused and he let out a cry of surprise. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.